morning, everyone. Welcome to our general meeting of the Board of Directors for April 12th. And we're going to start with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America.
Republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible.
Are you out there on the Bear River, Ricky?
Yeah, that's where I am. I wish.
Okay, and now we have roll call.
Okay, Division 1, not here. Division 2?
Here.
Division 4?
Here.
Division 5?
Here.
Division 3?
Here. Okay, so we start with our...
The Division 1's attending through Zoom.
Division 1 is attending as a member of the public.
Thank you, Rich.
We're going to... public comment for items not on the agenda today. Any public comment? Oh, Ricky is raising her hand. Okay.
Thank you. I guess this is the best place to bring this up, and I'm just reminding everyone that NID's comments, final comments to the quote-unquote final EIR for the Rise Gold Mine proposal are due very soon. In fact, yesterday I heard it was April 17th. I don't know, Jen, if you've been able to confirm that, but yes, our final comments will be due soon, and hoping that we can all take a look at them before they go out to the public or out to the county.
I'll confirm when they're due and report back.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have to look at it, provide any comments.
Does the board desire to have this come back as an agenda item? I was intending to process the comments under my name as a representative of the district. If the board desires to sign the comment letter, it would need to come back as a full agenda item. I would recommend letting staff provide the comments under our name. That would then lend itself to me making public comments at the hearing.
I agree with that approach.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if we have a chance to see the comment, the content of the comment that you make prior to it being submitted.
Sure, I'll send it out to the board individually, and if you have any comments or questions for me, just please reply back to me only.
Okay.
Perfect.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you speak? Yes. Judy Bellin.
Please step to the podium and state your name.
Now we members of the public can hear your comments.
Judy Valentine, rough and ready. I heard, I want to find out, the canals have algae running, growing in them, and I heard that Roundup or poisonous things were being put in the water to help the algae go away. And I just wanted to find out about that, because I'm not a fan of Roundup.
So
That's the question.
process that you know this, when we receive comments from the public, as a board, we're not supposed to respond to those questions, so that's why you're looking at these blank faces.
Well, I've never been here before, but I just,
Well, thank you for
I
coming.
have that concern.
Yeah.
Ms. Spell, why don't you leave your contact information and I can get in touch with you and we can respond to you directly.
Thank you for coming. Any other members of the public who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I'd like to move to accept the consent agenda with one addition. During my comments, I thanked Chip Close Director of Water Operations, and also Aurora Tipton and her team for the work on Oak Canyon. Aurora really had to do the deep dig, and this is something that's been plaguing that group for a long time. So they're on their way to solving it, and it's great, and it's all due to the work of Chip and Aurora, and should be noted. That was outstanding work. Thank you.
So I would recommend that the motion be made to move the consent agenda with the exception of adding in Aurora's name to the minutes from that meeting.
Look at that.
Are we going to have public comment on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll take a vote then.
Okay, Division 1, not here. Division 2,
Here, aye.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3.
Aye. So under general orders, we have the NID Strategic Plan.
Thank you, President Hall. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Jones, but we are very excited to announce that we believe the strategic plan has been completed. And I did want to thank all of the staff and Mr. Jones specifically for all their hard work. I think it was a really good process, and it was really exciting to have multiple members of staff representing different areas there. I thought that their feedback was invaluable. Also wanted to thank the board for your feedback. I'm really proud of the strategic plan. I think it's focused. I think it'll move the needle, and I think that it will really move the district's mission and vision forward.
So as we're pulling the presentation up, I'll just go over a quick background. We did spend quite a few months on this. It was part of the Plan for Water process, which I think is going to be a really helpful opportunity for both staff and the board as we move forward through the Plan for Water process. Once we develop the Plan for Water modeling tools, we'll be able to readjust. We'll be able to take a look at our strategic priorities, readjust as we move forward, and kind of amend on the fly if we necessarily need to. So that was the drive. It's been a long time in coming. The current strategic plan is, I believe, 2016, quite old, and so it is healthy and it's time. So we went over the general draft strategic plan back at the 22nd of March. We had a handful of changes and adjustments, made those to this document. I'll kind of just zip through it real quick. Nothing on these pages. Let's see, the mission, vision, values stayed the same. Here we added resiliency to, we changed the photograph down in the bottom right corner, okay? We changed the third strategic priority from watershed stewardship to watershed stewardship and resiliency. So that was one of the key things that we actually changed. There were a handful of other changes to this particular slide and page where we added time duration to goal number 1. Oops. A time duration, added develop a 5-year plan. Oops.
I think there were a couple typos.
Are we got it? Well, in the printed version, there was. In the published version, it should have been adjusted. So by the time we printed, I think we found a couple typos, yes.
A little technical.
Okay, all right, just go ahead and click through then if you've got the mouse. Okay. So, yeah, change the photo on there. We added watershed stewardship and resiliency to the priority number 3. Next page. Just a few edits here. We updated on goal number 1, we added a duration of timeline. On goal number 2, there was a bullet point number 3, develop metric analysis for canal improvement. That was specifically called out. We made sure we did that. A couple other changes to some dates on this one as well in goal number 2. Goal number 3, we adjusted the South Yuba Canal timeline from 2024 to 2025, just given us the, you know, in looking at the existing priorities and everything that staff has on its plate, just push that one out a little bit, and that was discussed at the meeting. Next page. Adjusted a photograph on this one. That was really all that was changed from the last time that we met regarding this. Next page. Added watershed stewardship and resiliency to the top in relation to the overall priority. Next page. And here we made a handful of date changes and timeline changes just to 2024, 2025. And that was really about the extent of the changes as we went down the different goals by priority and objective. Any questions, anything that we might have missed? I didn't feel there was a need to go through every single little change that we identified the other day. If you'd like me to, I can.
I guess I still kind of balk at the Southview Canal repair and replacement plan by the end of that. I worry about that infrastructure, as I know we all do, and that just seems like a long way off if we actually end up with that canal and we're not really looking at the mitigation plans for that infrastructure, but that's me, so.
Well, I would be comfortable with moving it to end of 2024.
We had it 2024 before, and then there was conversation about adjusting. We moved it, we can pop it back to 24, and if the board feels comfortable with that and the general manager.
And there's been some preliminary work already completed, and so we should have a fairly decent idea. I think that the ultimate challenge is going to be funding for any of the capital projects, but the sooner that we identify them, then we can include it into our financial planning. So my recommendation would be that we move to 2024.
Okay.
Going forward with the strategic plan, like, is there a plan to, like we did with the plan for water, policy, to put in there, we're gonna look at it every year? And it sounds sort of like the same with this. Are we going to bring it back and say, how did we do? Where are we with the timelines? Because we didn't do policy for this one.
Right, and that's the board's desire. If the board desires to have a strategic planning policy, we certainly can draft one and propose it to the board. It is typical for most agencies to review their progress on the strategic plan as well as to reaffirm the mission, vision, and the strategic priorities on an annual basis prior to annual budgeting. The strategic plan is integral to the budgeting process because it helps staff align our operational capital expenditures with meeting strategic priorities that we're identifying. So if the board, we can do it as part of the budgeting process, or if the board desires to have a standalone policy, that would be fine too.
I don't think we need a policy. That's the plan. That solves this problem of this particular question, I think, for me. As far as putting a date in there, this is a guesstimate. So
The fourth whereas within the resolution, 2023-17, specifically, I mean, we talk about this plan establishes the criteria to measure our progress. We don't necessarily call in there that it's an annual delivery to the board, but I think that's the intent, is to bring forth.
In the past, the strategic plan put on the shelf and never be brought out again.
Right.
So, but doing this much work, I think is a valuable tool, and to do that anyway, I'm comfortable. I don't think we need a policy.
I don't think this board's gonna let you go more than a year.
But I like it integrated with the budgeting process.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Makes sense.
We are going to be proposing a budget policy, and we can make that a notation in the budget policy that review the strategic plan as part of it. I think that would address your concerns.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great idea.
And then we'll modify that due date to end of 2024.
4 instead of 20.
So I have one thing, and maybe it's just a refresher, I don't remember, on this slide, goal 3. Refresh my memory, is it a resource, reason that we're doing the funds per year, or is it they waterfall into one another? So
No, it's just simply just a long-term planning exercise, and it's gonna be a lot to chew on for each particular fund because they are so different. In particular, I think the Fund 10 can stand alone as water, and then we would probably take Fund 50 and 30 together, since Fund 30 is essentially a requirement of Fund 50.
Okay. Thank you.
Great work on this. I really appreciate the history part of it. You know, Bert and Kate Church, their vision, how it became, you know, how it manifested, especially in the Nevada County Farm Bureau being such an intricate developer of NID, and just everybody who really had something to do about forming this district. And now we're charged to carry it forward. So I guess one question on the South Yuba Canal, how long has it been there?
Yeah, I think the biggest risk with the South Yuba Canal is a fairly simple structure, is obviously wildfire.
Yeah, yeah, and I just, I don't want it to be the thing that drives everything else. It's just part of the whole package that we deal with. It's not going to, you know, it shouldn't suck resources, too many resources unless we have a problem, from a lot of things that we have to do and are doing. So, it's been there. I don't know what the average maintenance cost per year is, or how much the repair cost is. Don't want to minimize it, but still, let's just put it in its context.
Right, and I'm sure El Dorado Irrigation District did that when they had 3 flumes burned down
I
to a
understand.
cost of $27 million to
Yeah.
repair.
I understand.
Just 2 years ago. And at PCWA last year with the mosquito fire, so it's a different reality today. But point taken that it is within a context of other needs within the district, but I would not put it as it has never burned, so it won't burn in the future.
No, it didn't say that.
No, but there, the implication was there.
Actually, my grandfather skied it.
Yeah, just to provide a little bit of context, any specific capital projects that came out of any analysis for the South Yuba Canal would be considered and approved by the board through the capital project program.
Yeah. And
So they would compete.
And I believe in reserves. Wrong. So,
Okay, so thank you for the comment on the history, because that is absolutely true. We have a wonderful legacy that we inherit from past leadership that we need to encourage. Thank you, and this helps us to achieve that. Ricky has her hand up. She sure does.
So just a reminder, we're awkward here because we have to treat her as any other member of the public. So if you're ready for public comment, then we can
Go
turn
ahead with
to.
Emily. We're ready for public comment. So, Ricky.
Thank you. So I just had a comment on this slide that's up right now, the strategic priority financial sustainability slide. And, you know, under goal 3 objectives, I'm wondering if it would be helpful. I know it would be for me, and it certainly would be for the public, if we, when we refer to a fund, Fund 10, what is that? I mean, we know inside that that's the water fund, but I just wonder if it would be helpful to say Fund 10 paren water, Fund 30 paren, you know, and so on, and just have a brief definition of what those are, because it's kind of inside baseball there.
Absolutely. That's a real easy fix.
Yep.
I thought so. Okay. Thank you. Otherwise, this is wonderful, and thank you to the staff that did all of this. Wonderful job. So.
Any comments from members of the public?
I'm going to move to adopt resolution number 2023-17, adopting the NID 2023 Strategic Plan.
I'll second. Got it. You looked at it first.
Division 1, not here. Division 2,
Aye.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3.
Aye.
As amended. As amended.
As amended.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so, we'll move on to our workshop items, and we're going to move item 5B, to be the first item of discussion, and that's the George Lake Wildwood Pipeline Project. And I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, President Hall. Mr. Roderick will be providing the presentation. The purpose of this item today is not to have a specific decision point regarding the East George Lake Wildwood Pipeline Project, otherwise affectionately known as the BEP, or the Backbone Extension Project. It is to receive input from the board on a variety of options that are available for the current project. So the current project, and Doug will go through it in more detail, the current project was cleared environmentally some time ago, and it has not been funded in recent capital programs. We are here today to receive input from the board as to whether or not the board would like to maintain the existing scope of the project or modify the scope of the project. And Doug will go through pros and cons and some different alternatives, and we're just here to receive input from the board as well as from the public, but there will be actually no voting or decisions being made. It's a workshop item. So,
Can you say your opening again, when you were, go?
yeah, so the project was previously cleared from an environmental perspective, and it was a multi-phase project, and Doug can go into a little bit more detail, that there was one phase of the project constructed. Doug?
Yeah, one of the interior pipeline sections was upgraded.
One of the phases of the project was already constructed. In the recent capital programs, the other phases of the project have not even been funded through the annual capital program. Staff has done some additional evaluation of the original project scope and has come up with some additional alternatives for the board to consider. If the board desires to maintain the scope or modify the scope, the project would then have to go back through the capital budgeting process in which any future portions of construction would compete with the rest of the capital program.
The board approved the phase project, right?
Correct.
How many years ago was that? 3 years ago?
Yeah, that was in 19, I think we did the CEQA work.
Decided to do the phase project, right, like 9 years, 9 phases or something?
Correct.
It'll make a little bit more sense when we start going through it.
Hey, Doug, could you give a little history of the Backbone Extension Program and other projects that we have done under that?
Yeah, so the idea of the Backbone Extension Program was to make interconnections with our various treatment plants so that we would have secondary supply sources to them. So we've done one for Lake of the Pines. We did the BEP down through there. We obviously have interties between East George and Loma Rica. So part of that idea was to extend these pipelines for the purpose of having additional supply to the treatment plants as a backup. Not that one could serve necessarily 100%, but that it would be able to be there for emergencies and to help during peak day demands and that type of stuff.
Public health and safety.
Yeah, having 2 sources of water supply for a treatment plant, I mean, ideally, that's the best. You can't always get that accomplished, but that would be the ideal goal.
Lake of the Pines.
Lake of the Pines, we did one, correct, that ties in.
That's also Alto Sierra?
From Alto Sierra down to Lake of the Pines.
Yeah.
Correct. And I don't remember the specific date we did that. We finished that 4 or 5 years ago.
So I would assume there's no redundancy for the North Auburn water treatment plant?
Correct, in terms of another treatment plant being able to supply. It does have multiple sources of supply, so that's beneficial in terms of that treatment plant, but it doesn't have a secondary, well, I take that back. We have a intertie with PCWA, so for North Auburn, we actually have interties with PCWA for treated water, and then it has multiple sources of raw water.
So is there a difference between interties and BEPs, or are they?
They're kind of similar. The interties, like between East George and Loma Rica, is that we can help serve one through the other. This is the same idea. It just takes more infrastructure to get it down there. They're not as in close proximity.
How long can you take advantage of those interties?
Well, I think with E. George and Loma Rica, as well as the one to Lake of the Pines, we use on an annual basis, usually multiple times. We can take the Lake Wildwood down, Lake of the Pines down for maintenance and repairs, while we can feed it off of the BEP system. Same with Loma Rica and E. George, gives us flexibility to be able to do that in an annual basis.
It's beneficial for maintenance, but it's also beneficial during the winter months when you're limited to primarily indoor water use and your flows are much lower, so that you can take one whole plant down and serve it off of another plant. And there are definitely positives to it.
Yeah.
And historically, how have they been funded? Has it been
Just through normal capital.
capital process?
Yeah, the water capital projects are currently funded through water rates as well as through property tax. In the past, there was also some transfer of hydropower revenue to the water fund that could essentially be used for the funding of capital projects. But at that point, hydropower was not paying for overhead expenditures, and so we have modified that accounting mechanism through the cost allocation plan. And now hydropower is not directly subsidizing water, but it is paying for its fair share of the overhead expenditures, as well as it pays for a lot of all of the reservoirs and dams that exist in the upper division areas and some of the lower division.
But for these extensions, you haven't had to go out and raise public funds?
No, the funding of any capital program or project is certainly related to all of the operational expenditure needs as well as capital expenditure needs. In the past, there was more funding that was put towards backbone extension projects or the district funded water line extension projects as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think one of the challenges the district is currently facing is we are looking down the pipeline at some very, very heavy capital expenditures, which are going to make the capital budgeting process extremely complex over the next 10 years.
So maybe we can proceed.
Well, do we have a figure on, so hydro is paying for the upper division, do we have a figure on if that was to be better accounting, how much water would have to pay for that?
We are currently going through that process right now as part of the Prop 218 process that we've undertaken. And the work that Kian has been completing will really kind of divvy out those expenditures. So what we have asked hydropower to do is to isolate the expenditures that are associated only with the hydropower and the operation of the hydropower facilities, as well as the capital requirements, versus as opposed to mixing them with the dams and the reservoirs in the canal system, because those assets would still maintain even if hydropower was gone.
Right, and that's a very important point that needs to be made, in even the discussion we had in the last meeting.
Definitely.
Yep.
And we'll be able to present that information to the board once we're done going through it all.
6 months?
Well, it's part of the Prop 218 process. Ideally, what we're striving to do is identify what the actual cost to deliver raw water is, so that we have a better understanding of the financial implications of the hydropower system, and then also give us a baseline of where the raw water rates should be set as. Just give the board a better financial picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Ready? Okay. So yeah, as Jennifer stated, this is a workshop to talk about the E. George Lake Wildwood pipeline, the BEP pipeline. A couple things we're going to talk about today. I'm going to go through the Yes, sir.
Excuse me. The workshop here means that the audience can ask questions during the workshop, and we'll get a response.
At the podium.
So you just at the podium.
Yeah, so feel free to jump in at any time here. So we'll talk about the alternatives, the original project that we had identified, as well as looking at some of those additional alternatives that we've taken a look at recently. We'll talk a little bit about costs. I did add one slide to the presentation that you'll see here and modified another one, and it has to do with some O&M costs. That's probably some good information for the board as well as the public to have. So there'll be an additional slide that you'll see as we get to the cost section that's currently not in your packet. And then what the next steps are, as she stated. Okay, excuse me. So, going through alternative one, which was basically the project that was originally identified in the CEQA document as we move forward with it, and that was the installation of the pipeline, as well as keeping the Lake Wildwood treatment plant. It was meant to be to offset for helping for peaking, to supply additional water down to Lake Wildwood, but it wasn't meant to take Lake Wildwood treatment plant offline completely, especially during the summer months. Winter months, that's a little different. When demands are lower, we can kind of move forward with that. But the idea being is that the treatment plant stays there. This is the BEP. It adds a secondary supply to the system down in Pin Valley and Lake of the Pines. And so that was alternative one, the one that we had decided to move forward with. We've also taken a look at a couple other ones, what we call alternative 2, 3, and 4. That's basically taking the treatment plant offline, no longer utilizing the Lake Wildwood treatment plant and feeding everything from Elizabeth George treatment plant. We've got plenty of capacity still built into the E. George system. I think it's at 18 MGD, and the most we've ever put through E. George is about 9 in a day, and it's actually been trending down. So anyway, there's plenty of capacity to be able to feed the Lake Wildwood area, Penn Valley area.
Can you help us
Yeah.
by letting us know what E. George is, where?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah,
where
yeah.
the water comes from?
And-
Because I think we, as the public, really want to understand this.
Ma'am, if we're gonna make or comments, which is awesome, we just need to go to the podium, otherwise folks at home can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay, so the question was, Elizabeth George is our treatment plant that's up off of the Banner Mountain. It's our biggest treatment plant. It's been upgraded in, 2016, 15? From 12 to 18, MGD, million gallons per day. That's fed off of the Banner Cascade pipeline that we installed a couple years ago as well, which comes off of the Deer Creek side of the system. So that water that feeds a big majority of what you see here in the Grass Valley. And so that's what that one is. Was there another, I can't remember, was there a second question to that? Okay.
How many MGD is Lake Wildwood?
I believe it's 4. And recently, the last 12 years, we've been trending downwards. Most all the treatment plants have been trending downwards in terms of max day usage. It's anywhere around 2, just a little over 2 to a little under 2. It bounces around. Part of that is conservation, getting the message out. Part of the thing we're ultimately going to have to look at is there's also state regs that are going to require us to have input in terms of in-home uses and stuff, which is going to potentially drive that number down as well. But yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
And you said the max at E. George now is 12?
No, it was 12. It's 18.
I don't believe,
Oh, the max day that they've had there, 9?
9.
Yeah, and that was probably 12, 13 years ago when we hit that.
Wow.
It's been less than that since then.
So it could be expanded to 24.
Yeah, the filters have already been expanded to 24, but it's the said basins that are, maybe not adequate enough, but we have room to add another said basin to make it from 18 to 24. But currently it's 18.
Hey, guys, and what is the current MGD, and maybe Karen, you asked this, but I couldn't hear the response, for the Lake Wildwood treatment plant, and what is the capacity? So like, what is the usage and what is capacity there?
Yeah, so it was, 4 MGD is the capacity of the plant. Lately, we've been trending around 2, a little over 2.25 million gallons a day. In the last 10 to 12 years, that's the numbers that it's been sitting at. Before that, we did get a couple of numbers. We were at 3.8 or 9, I think, at one time. That was just 1 year, and then we had another one that was like 3.3 or something. But for the most part, it's been under 3 in the last 18, 20 years.
there's about 3,600 customers in that service area.
Yeah.
Compared to how many customers from E. George?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
It's,
Okay.
yeah, over 12,000. I mean, it's clearly our biggest treatment plant, but yeah, somewhere in there.
Right, right. And is there an ability to expand the Lake Wildwood treatment plant from 4 to something else to account for growth down there, or is that not necessary?
I don't believe that it's necessary at this point.
Yeah, I think the question would be is what we would need to, right now, we would tend to be trending that we don't need to expand the treatment plant, but even if
Okay.
you upgrade it, you would have the ability to do it in segments so that we could always expand it in the future if we needed to. But I don't know if I would recommend expanding it above 4 at this point.
Yeah, I think one thing that's important to note is an expansion of a water treatment plant to accommodate growth would be paid for on capacity fees, whereas a capital project such as the BAP would be more of a ratepayer type funded scenario.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So new growth would be any new development, of course, or any, let's say Wildwood West that has not hooked in. Would that include that 300 some?
They would, but that type of project would typically be funded through capacity fees that are paid by the project proponent that is building the new development.
The one-to-one.
Right, it would be accounted for by them. And I don't know that we've been approached anytime recently regarding growth. And as Mr. Roderick stated, one thing that you do have to remember is that treated water is one of the easiest customer bases to get to conserve water. And we do expect this trend of per capita treated water use to continue to decrease over time. The state is currently working through some new regulations for outdoor treated water use, which we do believe will really decrease overall treated water use.
So it gets planning for the treatment plants a little tricky.
It does.
Yeah.
And it's not super advantageous to have an oversized treatment plant that has no realistic time frame for being used. It would have to continue to be replaced. If you have an area that is experiencing high growth, many agencies would kind of do a package type plant scenario where additional modules could be constructed as growth comes online.
Okay, so the 3 alternatives, and I'll go through them a little bit here in detail, but we looked at 3 different routes, what we call the Bitney Springs Road route, Rough and Ready Highway, Rough and Ready Road route, and then the Bitney Springs and Rough and Ready Highway. Again, those are all 3 alternatives that we would build and eliminate the Lake Wildwood treatment plant so that we would feed the whole Penn Valley Lake Wildwood system directly from the Elizabeth George system.
So the pipeline would go into Bitney Springs first and then come over to Rough and Ready Highway?
For which alternative you're looking at? For 4, yeah, we'll go through it. Like, I got maps, we'll go through them and we'll show you.
What are the pros and cons of each of those?
Yeah, we're gonna go through those, yeah. And then, and then the 5th alternative is not to do the BEP connection at this time and just focus on the the Lake Wildwood treatment plant, because we do need to do something with that sooner than later. We've been kind of on hold and doing some temporary stuff with the idea that this BEP project was moving forward, but we need to make a decision on what we want to do with that treatment plant sooner than later.
So one comment, maybe just to help you as you walk through this, there are capital expenses detailed for each one of these options, but what I didn't see is the operation and maintenance costs over a period of time for each one of these.
So I added that slide.
Oh.
So it's not in there,
Okay.
but I did add a slide.
Good.
So we have that information, we get the cost, we'll be able to talk about that. We'll talk about that a little bit.
Karen had the same question.
How much
She beat you to it.
by shutting down Wild?
Exactly, right? Because if you just look at the capital, it gets a little skewed, so you gotta look at what it takes to run and maintain it.
Right.
Okay, so, alternatives. So this is the first one. This is the one that was approved through the CEQA work, which is, and we'll show you a map here in a second. It's a new pipeline along Rough and Ready Highway and then along Rough and Ready Road to feed back into the Lake Wildwood system. Ultimately, we would have upgraded the treatment plant as part of this project because this particular layout and design was meant to supplement the flows to Lake Wildwood and not take them completely offline, especially during the peak. This one was designed for roughly 2 million gallons a day, max we could push through the pipe, so we would still need a treatment plant for peak summer months, et cetera. So you would not have to run it as long, you would probably run it more like 2 or 3 months out of the year, because you could use the pipeline for most of the time, and then during those peak summer months, we would have the treatment plant running to be able to supplement for the peak flows.
How does that impact operations from a staffing standpoint? Do you have that flexibility to move people around?
Yeah, so the treatment plant operators got plenty of things to do with regards to running the treatment plant. So when it's offline, they'll be doing some maintenance work and some housekeeping, but then they've got plenty of other duties that they do. There's not one individual assigned just to that treatment plant. So they bounce around to all the different types of things there. It does require some of those existing improvements to E. George. We'll talk about that here in the map in a second, and that's for all but the last alternative, alternative 5, which is just the Wildwood upgrade. All require the improvements within the E. George system to happen for us to be able to get the water down the hill. We do have restrictions in some old pipes within the existing E. George system that need to be upgraded. In fact, one of them that we have to deal with was the one that created the sinkhole you guys might be aware of that happened the other day. So that's one of the sections of pipe that we'd have to upgrade. Again, it was intended to back up Lake Wildwood. It talks about treatment plant being able to take it offline, we can reduce O&M costs, and I've reflected that in the numbers we'll talk about as we get in there, to less chemicals, less labor time, et cetera, because we're only operating it for a shorter window. Use more chemicals during that time, but overall it's a shorter number in general. This was originally planned to be built over multiple years. The idea was that we could spread this out over 9 or 10 years within the capital project and try to absorb those costs without a big impact, because the overall project was roughly $20 million back in the beginning. And so this would allow us to spread that out over a 9 or 10 year window.
What's your raw water source for Lake Wildwood?
It's the Newtown Canal.
That, your break again?
Yeah.
It's been shut down 3 times in the last 30 years due to fire.
Okay, so here's the new pipeline section from the original project that we proposed.
Doug?
Yeah.
Can you,
Sorry.
just speak a little bit louder so the folks in the back of the room can hear you?
Okay. I'm sorry.
Perfect.
I'm facing the wrong way and you guys can't hear me that way. How's this? This a little better?
And feel free to also scoot up if that helps.
Okay, bring your chairs right up front here. Yeah. So this is the alignment of the original one, which you can see goes down Rough and Ready Highway, and then it ties off onto a Rough and Ready Road and goes over ties into the existing Lake Wildwood system. We will be installing a couple of new PRVs as well as a new flow control valve station as part of that project. Here's the work within the existing. You can hopefully see that. It looks better on the picture over there. The green line, that's the new improvements that we need to do within the existing system. All the blue lines you see there is the existing pipelines within the E. George system. So those sections in green are the areas that we need to be improving so that we can push water through that system, get it out, and then down towards Lake Wildwood. And that has to be done for all the alternatives except the 5th alternative, which is just the treatment plant upgrade alone. So those costs are inherently the same for all the different alternatives, that component. So some of the challenges that we had with that original alternative, building the new pipeline, especially the new pipeline portion, over multiple years, we've got a very large pipe with very little to no service on it at all, which means we're going to be flushing a very large amount of water on a regular basis to try to keep that pipe clean. I think that was an 18-inch pipe, I think, originally for that one. So, you know, you got a couple miles of 18-inch pipe with basically no service off it. It's going to get pretty messy. So we're going to have to spend a lot of time flushing and maintaining that facility because of that purpose.
Yeah, during the summer months, when the heat goes up, the chlorine is gone out of the water, and so it's typical for treated water systems that have long end runs that are dead end to have to flush them routinely during the summer months. That means just running water out of them.
Almost weekly, right?
It depends on, Chip would know better than me.
It's more like monthly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a large volume of water, right? So we have to move a large volume of water out that will be just flushing and spilling into the natural channel and losing that as we...
From that perspective, the phased construction approach associated with alternative plan does not make any sense for us.
Correct.
Looking at a 10-year process?
It depends on the funding.
Yeah.
It's a 9-phase project.
9-phase project.
So I think the section, the improvements within our existing system, those could be phased because we're continuing to use it for the existing E-George system as well, so we wouldn't have that same problem. Once we start down the hill towards the Lake Wildwood, Penn Valley area, that's when that pipeline is just gonna be a dead-end pipe until we get it to the end and actually can get water circulating and flowing into the Lake Wildwood system.
How long is that section?
You remember?
Once you come out of
The new pipeline
new pipeline?
for this one.
5-6 months.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, actually, I might have that. How did I say that? It's about 27,000, yeah, about 27,000 feet of pipe. Several miles, a mile.
Flushing several miles of pipeline is highly problematic.
Well, we could just have a fire hydrant there for water tenders.
You'd love that. I could call all the counties to come fill up.
I could park in one place.
Do you have an idea about the water loss? You know, as you spoke about it, as you flushed it, how much water we would be losing or just discharging into natural channels?
Piles,
A lot,
a lot.
because we're getting basically no circulation in that pipe, so we'd have to
Mhm.
turn that water over. So that's several miles of 18-inch pipe. I didn't do the math on that, but a lot of gallons.
Lots and lots and lots of water.
Lots and lots. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you'd be amazed how much water goes down with flushing.
So, this alternative includes upgrading the Lake Wildwood treatment plant. How do you prioritize, does that come first, upgrading the water treatment plant, then the pipeline?
So that's part of the where we go next section, which is we need to ultimately do something with the Lake Wildwood treatment plant. I believe we're painting clarifier B or A? B. Today, this year, as kind of a stopgap, because we need to do that. So we've been pushing off any real work at the Lake Wildwood treatment plant with the idea that we would ultimately be getting this down there. Then we could take more time to upgrade the treatment plant because we could supplement flows during the off-peak times and allow us to do better construction and upgrades of the system if this pipeline was in place. That was kind of the original thought, that we would be working the pipeline first and then we would deal with the treatment plant.
But it's, as I understand it, it was a 9-10-year project.
Correct, that didn't include the treatment plant. That was for all the pipeline and the improvements for that.
So,
Didn't include the treatment,
It did not the 10-year window.
the cost, the cost estimate.
Correct, the original one.
what I'm trying to understand is, my understanding is the Lake Wildwood water treatment plant needs attention now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but what I'm hearing, did I hear you wrong, that we wouldn't begin work on that water treatment plant until after the pipeline is done?
That was the original plan, right? And that was 3-4 years ago when we started this project. The idea being is that we would be building this project and we would keep Lake Wildwood functional as we needed to. And then once the pipeline was installed, that would allow us to do better construction and upgrades because we can take the plant offline, run with only one clarifier, so we can bounce around and have better construction.
We could probably Band-Aid and duct tape the plant together for.
Yeah, that was kind of the idea.
That's the idea. It does need an actual overhaul.
Yeah, it does need to be improved, but now it's becoming more prevalent that we deal with the treatment plant sooner than later. And so now that this pipeline has stopped, it's come into the forefront that we need to decide how we're gonna move forward to deal with that component.
So that's alternative number 5, which is $7.5 million for the treatment plant alone.
Correct.
Correct, that's just updating the treatment
And
plant.
sooner than later means 2 years?
We would be Band-Aiding it together for,
Yeah.
ideally within 4 or 5 years, for sure.
Oh, so we have 4 years to do this.
Yeah, but we're having to be
Oh, yeah,
creative.
and it's not fair.
And that one would be phase 2, right? Because we gotta do the ponds and the drying beds, and we gotta do the filters, and we gotta do all those, and we can do those over, you know, a 2 or 3 year window, mainly because we'll need to do that so we don't take the plant offline, because we can't do that for an extended period of time at this point. So it would be a phased approach, just out of necessity of having to keep the treatment plant running. But yeah, it would be over a couple year window to do it. So some of the other things, it is the overall highest cost of the alternatives we've talked about or will be talking about, at the 28 million, a little over 28 million. It does reduce some O&M costs, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we stopped it, as Jennifer mentioned, because of the priority. We have other projects in our capital program that are higher priority than installing a new pipeline down for the supplemental flows, which in a perfect world, everybody wants to have multiple sources of water, multiple ways to serve folks, so that we limit impacts and emergencies, et cetera, and flexibility in our system.
We have a question here, Doug.
Oh,
Yes. It's my understanding from what I'm hearing then, this 18-inch pipeline you're talking about will go down to Lake Wildwood to take the place of the water treatment plant down at Lake Wildwood.
So some of the alternatives that I'm gonna talk about will do that. This first one that we're talking about would not. This would just supplement flows to the Lake Wildwood
An
treatment plant.
18-inch pipeline to supplement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry, I don't look this way, so if somebody stands up to throw something at me or.
So would you clarify that point that she was at, the still requires 18-inch pipe to supplement?
Correct.
The current project, as scoped originally and cleared through environmental, was essentially an interconnection to Elizabeth George and an update to the current plant. So you could serve the community off the current plant or from the interconnection to Elizabeth George. Once we go through alternatives, the kind of second suite of alternatives is that we would interconnect to Elizabeth George, mothball the Lake Wildwood plant for treatment plant consolidation. The last alternative is to not do the interconnection at all to Elizabeth George and just improve the Lake Wildwood treatment plant.
The original approved, pipe, was that also 18 inches or it was smaller?
It was a combination. It had
Yeah.
18 and 16-inch pipe in it, both,
Okay.
depending on the location. And look, Tanya may have a question. She was the modeler that did most of this, so she'll be more intimate in terms of some of those details.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's why I was up here, just to clarify, it was a combination
Yeah.
of sizes. And part of the reason for that was the potential to be able to build a lake down to Penn Valley via Rough and Ready Highway. So that first segment there, coming up to where Rough and Ready Highway and Rough and Ready goes split, generally that's gonna be a larger pipeline than the other two sections as you go along Rough and Ready Road and Rough and Ready Highway.
And just to clarify, you said leg, L-E-G, or?
Yeah. Leg.
Leg, okay.
If you had all of the money in the world and money was no option, or no problem, you would build alternative one, right? It gives you the most flexibility, you have a secondary treatment plant, you have a secondary source of water. That would be the ideal alternative. But we don't have unlimited money.
The government does. Or they think.
Thanks, Tanya. Okay, so, pros and cons of alternative one. Obviously, with the pros, we keep two sources of supply down to the Penn Valley, Lake Wildwood area. It allows the treatment plant to be taken offline. We probably only operate it more as a peaking plant during the summer months. Allows us plenty of time for more maintenance, et cetera. It also lowers O&M costs because we're not having to deal with chemicals, electricity, all that stuff throughout those 7 or 8 or 9 months that we wouldn't be utilizing the plant. It has a lower, what I meant by lower impact to capital is that some of these pieces can be done separately, whether we do the treatment plant first, make some improvements there. We can do improvements to the existing E-George system, and then we would need to build a section in between. So you can spread that out a little bit better in terms of what I meant by impact to the capital versus the other ones, which is you got to build all the pipeline, you got to do it all at once. You can't wait, kind of thing. Right? So it brings additional treated water and hydrants to areas that currently don't have it, and you can see on the map quickly. Right there, you see the area in gray in the map. So when Tanya laid this out and modeled it, the idea being is that we could have service within that area also off of this pipeline, because we wouldn't design a pipeline to not be able to accommodate some folks that could connect right along the pipeline route. So, cons, it's the higher O&M than some of the alternatives 2 through 4, and it's overall, it's a higher cost. And it's got some limitations on lifetime because it's a treatment plant that has to be dealt with sooner than a pipeline.
So, the lower life expectancy
Mm-hmm.
means that the water treatment plant, life
Yeah.
expectancy or the pipeline?
The treatment plant.
Treatment
The
plant.
treatment plant's not gonna last as long as the pipe.
Yeah, and it won't last as long as East George. I mean, if you have to keep coming up to water standards put out by the state, that's an unknown cost.
Yeah, so obviously, having to deal with treatment plant issues, regulations as we move forward, having less treatment plants to deal with in terms of that is gonna be a better scenario for us.
You have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the water board promotes consolidation of treatment plants. And that's primarily for the reason is that as the water quality standards change, it's, as Doug stated, it's easier to upgrade one plant than it is multiple plants.
And that one was most recently done, so it's our new shining star.
Right.
In terms of that. Okay, so alternative 2, now we're talking about alternatives with no treatment plant at Lake Wildwood, mothballing the treatment plant at Lake Wildwood. So this is the Brittany Springs route, which runs along Brittany Springs. It's again intended to supply the entire Lake Wildwood, Penn Valley area. No longer need to use the Lake Wildwood treatment plant. It's considerably cheaper in terms of O&M costs. It's a buried pipeline, a ductile iron pipeline, and we'll talk a little bit about that in terms of numbers. It's pretty simple to maintain a pipeline. It's not a lot of stuff we have to do to it on a regular basis.
It does not go through Rough Ready.
This one does not, and we'll show you the map. Yep. Overall cost of the 3 pipeline alternatives, this was the cheapest of the overall capital costs, which is one of the reasons we looked at this route. So here you can see it in this location here. You basically come down right to the bottom there, which is Brittany Springs. And then it follows along Brittany Springs and then comes back in. And we've got 2 different potential options, whether we tie in just upstream or just downstream of the treatment plant. You can see that on the map. And then again, the area in gray is the area that we would also be able to serve. There might be a pump zone in that section there, I think is on the map. Yeah, it's on the map there. But that's also taken into account in terms of the sizing of the pipe.
Doug?
Yeah.
Hi. How many customers one of the things I'm interested in is the length of time each one of these alternatives would take, or if one is simpler and less time than the other, and then how many customers potentially would we be serving in each alternative? Do we know that?
Yeah, so on the map, it might be a little hard to see, but you look at the legend, it identifies the number of parcels in that area.
Oh, okay.
So for the one we're talking about now, that gray area, there's about 495 parcels that we could
In the new area that could potentially
be served, right?
And recall, this goes back to a lot of the conversations and challenges that we have with the district funded water line extensions, is that the connection to the system is really going to be based off of the parcel owner's ability to pay the connection and capacity fees.
Right.
Correct.
What about,
Time? Yeah, time.
Correct. Yeah, that would all have to be installed by the individuals there, right? But we have the ability, should that happen, should folks have the wherewithal to do that, that we can serve those areas.
Of the 495 parcels, under 23 are adjacent to the pipeline.
Okay. Is that what you?
123.
Yeah.
Okay. Which could be just connected right off of it.
Right. It would be difficult to make a case that the connection of the areas that are not currently being serviced would be a huge pro in this case. I mean, it would for the small number of people, but one of the challenges we always have is the number of people on per linear foot of pipe.
Right.
Yeah. And the pipeline reimbursement and all that portion of it too. Existing policy.
Hello again. Anyway, I had a friend, Brewer Road, I think you guys did a big pipeline that way. And she couldn't afford, she said it was, Yeah, just stand back a little bit.
There,
She said that, they told her it'd be $80,000 to hook up.
that was probably associated with paying the connection fees, the capacity fees, but also her fair share of the cost to construct the pipeline, which can be expensive. 80,000 sounds a little bit extreme to me. We typically don't see the cost that high, but what are the current capacity and connection fees?
Those are what, 12?
About 12,000, probably about $15,000.
I have it written on the same pipe that said 50,000.
50? It could be. So usually, outside of the district-funded water line extension programs, that the parcels that benefit from the construction of new infrastructure, they pay their fair share apportionment of the cost to build that infrastructure. When you don't have a high density of parcels on one long pipeline, that cost obviously gets escalated. And it can be unaffordable.
Right, and that's the policy that we currently have in place for pipeline reimbursement of facilities installed by the district. Collect the cost of that pipe.
And that's one of the biggest challenges of our system in general, is that the amount of revenue we collect per parcel is much lower than an agency that has a more densely populated area with smaller parcels. So we have less people paying for the future replacement of longer runs of pipe.
You have a lot of neighbors, losing their wells?
Not where we are, no. I think, I haven't heard of anybody losing their well yet. We're down in Rough and Ready, on Cook Road, which is a long ways from Bethany Springs.
Next alternative.
And we're in the middle of the no insurance zone, basically. And so some of our people are concerned about maybe fire hydrants, things like that. How would those things be paid for?
Well, I don't know, I guess we used to have that as part of our community investment program, which we no longer have. But, you know, typically when we build a pipeline, we're looking for hydrants roughly every 1,000 feet, give or take, depending on topography and where we can set them, et cetera. So we do install those typically when we install a project. We install the hydrants and those spacings, give or take, along the route, correct?
Okay, so that's no charge then, as long as it's on the direct route, right?
That wouldn't necessarily be included in part of this project unless the board decided to make it part of this project.
We had some discussion about fire hydrants. Change the policy or talk about it, or?
I don't know that there was ever an actual policy, you're right. It is normal when individuals build new pipelines to include hydrants along them. But what is a little bit different from us than, say, like a city that would have that as a policy, is we are not also the fire department. And in this particular situation, most expansions of treatment systems are paid for by the parcels that are a proponent of the project in the first place. So the board would have to make the determination as to whether or not they wanted to include that in the project.
Okay, if they did not want to pay for it, what would be the cost for it?
Oh, to install a new hydrant, probably $3,000.
No, typically right now, it's probably closer to $7,000 to $8,000. Mm-hmm.
Plus the pipe to get it.
Showing my age.
That's kind of the cost of doing that, is roughly that.
But it would be directly along the existing route of
Correct.
the pipe. Our road goes in 1.25 miles.
Yeah, correct.
So then we would have to pay for running pipe in
Correct.
to be able to have a fire hydrant in there. How much per mile?
Well, it really depends also on the available pressure in the system. You know, not being familiar with where the elevation of your road, it could.
1,700 feet.
Yeah, I mean, these are pretty detailed design questions. We'd have to probably answer them offline.
Yeah, well, it's helpful to get a general idea in advance so people have a realistic expectation.
It would be extremely expensive for a private parcel owner to build a 1.5 mile long pipeline.
I figured that. Thank you.
The first alternative, fire hydrants were discussed and included in the project. And I remember even one director, it changed the hope because it's so positive. The other thing is that possibly CAL FIRE look at potential county to help with grants, because this all helps have these fire hydrants. And, there's probably multiple sources we can look at, maybe not us, but someone who, has it. We can look at, because I think they're out there. I've been told that that kind of money is out there. It's just a matter of having a shovel-ready project and place to put them.
I do want to just somewhat help frame the expectation that in a large wildfire, it's not likely that the treated water system would be overly helpful. What a treated water system is helpful for doing is starting smaller, localized spot fires that are near the pipeline. In a large wildfire scenario, it would draw the treatment plants down very, very quickly, and at that point, they're most likely pulling water out of the lake.
We drained the Lake Wildwood treatment plant in 1988.
Correct.
4 hours.
49, yeah, and then we also did it in Auburn one time before.
And we do start making and moving water as quick as possible once we are aware of a wildfire, so that we can provide as much support. But there are a lot of issues with reliance only on a treated water system. In addition, though, the distribution system within Lake Wildwood, it hasn't been completely replaced yet, has it?
I'm sorry?
When was has the system within Lake Wildwood, the distribution system, been completely replaced?
No.
Yeah, the other challenge is with older water systems like that, you can't just pop on every single hydrant. It'll surcharge or it'll hammer the system too hard.
I think we've done some service laterals and stuff like that.
But
Yeah.
the idea of a fire hydrant is that the insurance companies like it. Two, they prevent small fires becoming large fires.
A lot of times right now, if somebody has a private parcel and they request fire service, they do pay for it.
Okay, next alternative 3, this is Rough and Ready Highway and Rough and Ready Road. This actually provides that second feed into Penn Valley, which we only have one feed coming across the highway now, so a secondary feed would be very helpful in terms of being able to get water circulating and have it over to that side. Same kind of thing, it requires the George improvements, Lake Wildwood treatment plant no longer offline. So they're very similar, other than this one actually feeds, so we have 2 feeds, which means as the pipe goes down the hill, it actually splits and becomes smaller pipes. So we don't have an 18 and a 16. We got an 18, I think it's 12s or that split off, or 14, something like that. So, anyway, a little bit more money in terms of capital costs. It's a little over 23 million. Here's the route. And so everything in that gray area there that you see, again, areas that can be served through this system as well. And so you see that second leg running down Penn Valley Highway and then actually tying into Penn Valley Drive.
So, a little background. So you go down and see the taco shell and the village and Lakes, Creekside Village and what used to be Plaza Tire. That's all in well water. So there's no service in that area at all. And then there's new development being planned for Penn Valley. So I just wanted to point that out, that a lot of those places are on well water.
Great. Any questions on that particular?
Do we have the number of parcels?
Yeah, that one I think is on there.
1,144.
Yeah, a little over 1,100 parcels.
Okay.
185 adjacent.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hello.
Kathy Hinman, Nevada County Association of Realtors and resident of Penn Valley, Lake Wildwood. And to my understanding, this option over 2 would provide a pipeline to a more denser population and service more of the population, and with the reduced cost to that population.
To the reduced cost.
Reduced cost because you're
You got more
actually within a
parcels.
service area. I would think that would be covered, as opposed to option two, where individuals.
You're still gonna have to pay the fair share for the
Right.
cost of the infrastructure that we
Right.
would have installed.
But with the
But
denser population.
if
it's
you're
spread
along the
out.
route, there'll be more potential connections that way, right? Some of this area that you see, and even in this map that you see here, would require mainline extensions off of this pipe in order to feed those areas. So it's just the idea is that based on pressures and elevations, et cetera, we can feed this whole entire area with water from this pipeline. But it would still require pipelines to be installed within the communities to be able to get water to all the homes. So it's really only the homes along the route that connect directly to the pipe.
About 2 years ago, I believe, our association sent in a letter supporting this, backbone extension.
Mm-hmm.
And with the option one, and, we're in reviewing that option three, looks like it would be, supporting some additional fire protection, to the Rough and Ready area, which is a big concern to all of us in that Penn Valley area. That's it. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
So, another question, we have about, NID has about 1,000, customers that use water conjunctively. And do we have an idea of how many would line up in Rough and Ready down into Penn Valley?
You're talking about constructed conveyance parcels?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't,
I don't know the number. Do you remember that?
I mean, sooner or later, they're gonna have to hook up, I think.
They are, so the constructed conveyance parcels in that original alignment, I believe it was about 35
Oh.
in the gray area. And
They're
then
highlighted.
the one.
They're green. They're highlighted, I'm sorry.
The green parcels, and along the alignment, I think it was like 13.
so
Hey,
in
Doug?
number one,
Oh.
we're talking about the clean out and all the clean out work that you had to do. Is there clean out involved with this, number three?
Clean out, you mean like the flushing of the pipeline, et
Yeah, that you
cetera?
were talking about.
No, so in this case, we would be, building it all as one project, and then
And
water
so,
would immediately
In
be
a sense, we're
flowing through
saving
it.
water too,
By doing this route,
yeah.
in terms of the flushing over the construction section, you would.
And so
For the
in
long
one,
haul,
how much
no.
flushing was involved?
Oh, that would
It's
depend
a
on.
lot.
Yeah, depending on how much pipe has been installed, because that's all dead-end pipe until we get it connected.
Dead end pipe, and then where does it flush out to?
We would
Anywhere.
discharge to the, we would do it at hydrants or at blow-offs, and we would dechlor and then discharge it to the
So
streams
you
within the area.
dechlor before you, okay,
Correct.
that was the question.
Yeah,
I
we
had.
have to do that, yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Doug, could you speak to the O&M or, the operating costs of this particular
Yep.
alternative as it relates to the other ones? Because I think alternative one was lower, and then you said 2, 3, and 4 was higher. And it would just be interesting to have a comparison compared to what and so on.
Yeah, I've got a slide coming up to talk about that.
Okay,
I'll get into the details on that, yeah.
thank you.
When you're
Okay.
thinking of people along the route, you're just figuring the adjacent parcels, or are you figuring all the ones further on in the green?
We look at the overall area, so it's not just along the pipeline, which is why that gray area goes quite a bit longer. So what we look at is, it's mostly based on elevations. Can we supply water from this system to that location without having to pump it or do something additional to it to maintain our minimum requirements that the state has? So we typically design for a minimum of 30 PSI at the meter, try to shoot for, so yeah.
Yeah, for the design of the pipeline, you take into consideration the potential areas for connecting. When we're talking about financing a large project like this, we wouldn't necessarily include all of those folks in our calculations.
In terms of the pipe, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
But it has the ability to do that. So we wouldn't want to build a pipeline and then you come in and ask to connect to it and we say, sorry, we actually don't have the ability to do that. That would be
Well, that
pretty
makes sense.
poor planning, yeah.
Okay.
Do we have just a WAG figure, like say per 1,000 incidences, how much water they would use and how much revenue that would generate?
Yeah, we could come up with it. So the construction of this pipeline, if we
I'm
just,
not concerned with the construction costs, like ongoing, if we did this and we had the ability to serve another 2,000 residences, how much water would they need and how much revenue would that get us?
So our,
Not enough for the future capital replacement of that pipeline. That's where the big dollar, a pipeline in itself, this pipeline wouldn't have heavy operational costs underneath these alternative scenarios of 2, 3, and 4. The pipeline is fairly simple. There are pressure reducing valves that have to be exercised and fixed. It's the large cost comes in the future replacement of the pipeline in 65, 70 years.
It has nothing to do with the cost of the pipeline.
That's what we collect revenue from ratepayers, is the future replacement cost. That's why the district's having financial difficulties right now.
We didn't collect enough.
Correct.
Yeah, but we can in the future.
I have to answer to my constituents on how much water would these new folks that would have access
Oh, we
use
hear,
out of storage,
so you're talking about,
and how much revenue would that put into the bank?
so he's talking like, well, for our capacity,
yeah.
base it on 1,250 gallons a day.
And how many new people did we say we could connect?
Well, this one has like 1,100.
Yeah, I can do the first one,
Yeah.
1,250.
1,250 is what our capacity is
Yeah.
based per day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
1.3 million, but that's the maximum.
That's maximum.
We don't ever hit that.
We never hit that number, but that's what we have
You
to
wouldn't just,
design for and figure out in terms of.
yeah,
Okay.
the pipeline's designed for 1,250, maximum peak day. The actual water use is something probably around 700 gallons per day.
Yeah, and that number's actually gone down. I think Tanya's even done that a little bit in her calcs because of the overall demand and the new requirements with the regulations, et cetera. The amount of water that people are actually using is less than that 1,250.
I know it's a small amount, but I will get phone calls of someone saying, where's that water coming from?
Yeah.
And it will be coming from the raw water users, right? And you just need to do the math to say, is this a small amount or this is a large amount of water?
Well, I think that the one thing that we often get that similar type of question, and what new connections, even if a pipeline is built, even if a district-funded water line extension is built, even if new development wants to come in, it's all first come, first served. So if new raw water users want to come in now, over time, before any of those new parcels are absorbed into the system, they're in line first, so they get the water first. So when water runs, yeah, so it's always first come, first served.
But
For treated water capacity and raw water capacity.
So this gets into like the water side discussion. I think this is where it's going to treated water, raw water customers exist today. Are they taking our water? Like
That's the question that we're gonna get as soon as you start saying that 1,200 new homes can take treated water.
the water is going to show on an average we sell.
yeah, it's not going to be a huge volume.
It's not a huge volume.
You just gotta be able to do.
All right, so raw water users currently use a little bit over 90% of our water supply. When we go through a planning process like the Plan for Water, we do incorporate into our future supply and demand needs any new connections that are related to our current service territory. So parcels that could reasonably connect. One of the challenges is that we have to determine what type of a reasonable absorption rate. So we don't just come in and say, okay, everybody's gonna connect that could possibly connect in year one. So we'll say, okay, we generally see connections increase, whether it's raw water customers or treated water customers, 2% per year, 3% per year, something much smaller over time. So you could make some projection out into the future saying, okay, if we did nothing for new supply, and absorption continues at a specific rate over time, then we run out of supply. That's what the Plan for Water will do.
We do have some data on WD, District Finance Water Line Extension, how many actually signed on and how many didn't.
Right.
Right, and it's a little bit less than half.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's a, you know, I'm looking, okay, we have 1,144 parcels, how many of those are actually gonna sign on?
I would probably say 20, 30%. It depends on the severity of their circumstance, as well as their financial ability to connect. Now that the district no longer has the loan program for payment of the capacity fees, it's likely we'll see less connections.
Okay. Okay, fourth alternative, last alternative that we looked at in terms of eliminating the mothballing the Lake Wildwood treatment plant, and this is the Whitney Springs Road Rough and Ready Highway route. Again, I think the important piece is this does add still a secondary supply over to the Penn Valley side, which is always a benefit. And then overall, the capital cost of this particular route is the highest of the three alternatives related to mothballing the Lake Wildwood treatment plant. So I kind of lumped all the, here's the map of it first. You can see here the route going up through Whitney Springs, as well as continuing down Rough and Ready Highway, and then on into Penn Valley Drive. So I lumped all the pros and cons of those three pipes kind of together, so we can go that way. Pros: water quality. Water's a little easier to treat up at E. George. By the time it runs through the Newtown Canal and goes through a lot of agricultural areas, et cetera, there's just more goodies to treat. These have long alternatives in terms of their lifespan. It's a pipe in the ground, so it's going to last considerably longer, 7,500 years for ductile iron pipe. We can get out of that with very low O&M costs. We're not pumping like we would be at the treatment plant. Alternative 2 is the secondary feed into, actually messed up on that line. Anyway, it's low cost because we don't have to maintain a treatment plant. It's strictly just a pipeline, which is a very small amount. We'll talk about those here in a minute. Again, the secondary feed also brings treated water folks that don't have access to it currently, as well as some additional hydrant potential areas to be installed. Cons: it does mean there's now only still one source of supply with Lake Wildwood, Penn Valley areas. The original plan of the BEP was to have two sources of supply. These three alternatives keep you at still the one source of supply. More difficulty in terms of maintenance with outages, because in that long stretch of pipe, if we have to shut something down, that entire stretch of pipe gets shut down. So if we have to do maintenance work or repair work on Whitney Springs and Rough and Ready, then everything below that is going to be turned off. So it becomes a big ordeal in terms of the maintenance and that component of it.
You can mitigate a little bit with tanks.
You can, but not in that stretch, because there's really, between Whitney Springs and Penn Valley, there really isn't any. So anywhere along that route, we have to shut it down. Tanks can't feed that system. They're just, anything below where we have to work is just gonna be out of water while we deal with it.
And there are tanks in Wildwood.
Correct. Yeah, so the Wildwood system itself, we got some ways to do it. It would be all the connections along the route would be unable to have water if we had to take that pipeline off.
Days worth in the tanks.
I think Lake Wildwood has about 3.1 million gallons of storage, give or take, depending on the time of year that it happens. Obviously, maintenance, we're not going to try to do anything in peak day, but in terms of some unforeseen outage.
So would we maintain those tanks if we took the plant?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we don't change that at all. Instead of the treatment plant feeding the system and the tanks, it's just the pipeline.
For clarification, I think we all know what Lake Wildwood is. But when you say Penn Valley, do you also mean the people off of Indian Springs Road and all of that too?
I mean the existing pipeline, the existing treated water area that's within the Penn Valley side, yeah.
Okay, so people that have raw water off of Indian Springs Road we're talking about that, and it all comes from the same place? No. So there's different systems.
Mm-hmm.
We're just talking about a very specific.
We're talking about specifically the treated water system within Penn Valley, not the raw water system.
Got it.
Yeah. So again, the cons, the secondary, it's expensive, and then water quality. One problem we do have is age of water. So, disinfection byproducts we're gonna have to pay attention to and deal with. Assuming we've got good flow going, it's not gonna be a problem. It's probably gonna be more potentially in the winter and the off-peak times where we got less water moving through the pipe. So Chip and his crew will have to be on top of that to monitor and deal with that.
That's why you don't build a monster pipeline, because it's just stagnant.
Hey, Doug?
Yeah.
Can you remind me, E. George, how do we deal with our processed water. Settling basin?
Yeah.
No centrifuge.
All said basin.
Same at,
Yes.
You have those, like, spur pipelines, like the one going to Penn Valley? Do you have, you don't have that flushing issue with any of the alternatives, 2, 3, and 4, right?
Once it's no, correct. Yeah, we expect we always flush our system because we flush our entire system regardless as part of a routine program that CHIP's team does. And so we would do this pipeline just like any other, just to flush things out, keep things moving. But the reality is there'd be a substantial flow going through that pipe to feed that whole entire area. So we wouldn't be worried about intense flushing. It would just be more of the normal type of stuff that we would do. Oops, sorry. And then the last one is just to upgrade the treatment plant. We need to upgrade the clarifiers and the filters and all the mechanical stuff, the drying beds, et cetera, the inlet structure, all that needs to be dealt with and upgraded. We need the chemical tanks. This could and most likely would be spread out over multiple years just because we can't take the treatment plant offline and rebuild it. So we'd have to phase it so that we can keep water flowing, et cetera, in terms of the constructability of it. No upgrades to the E-George system is needed, so we wouldn't have to specifically make improvements to the existing system in order for this, obviously, option to work. Still gets fed off the Newtown Canal. And of course, it's the cheapest capital cost up front related to it.
The cheapest up front.
Yeah, we're getting there.
How soon do you have to do another upgrade?
Oh, that depends. If you start to look at 50 years, there's some things you'll be doing in between that, whether you have to do some paintings of clarifiers or replacing the mechanical equipment, but big overhaul, upgrades and stuff, you're pushing out farther than that.
When was the plant built? 60s?
60-something.
60s. I'll also add that if you do choose an option where you rebuild the treatment plant, you're going to build it as a package where modules can just be added in the future. So you won't have to do a full-on plant upgrade in the future. Presumably, you're just adding another package to it that increases the capacity.
With the idea that ultimately that has to be
standards.
It depends on what they change to, but typically when those change, you can do smaller modifications to address them. Because each one of those components is providing a specific treatment process.
It will be required of all plants.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yep.
Yep, right. So we'd be doing that one and E-George.
So, pros and cons of this one, obviously low kind of upfront, the capital costs, construction within the existing footprint, so it's pretty simple, no right-of-way, et cetera, to deal with. It's all on our own property there. Upgrades, and like Chip just said, upgrades are modular, so we can make improvements and expansion increases, et cetera, at a much simpler thing. The cons, it's still only one source of supply like we currently have. Right? The whole idea of the BEP originally was to have two ways to get water there. Water quality with Newtown Canal, so always can be entertaining. And then the highest O&M costs with the year-round operation, and we'll get to that here on the next slide. And then the lower overall life expectancy versus a pipe. Pipe's just going to last longer.
What is the, so we say lower life expectancy, how many years is lower?
So it's going to vary, but I would expect you're going to be doing a big upgrade on a plant like that, probably in a 50-year window. You'll be doing some things along the way, replacements, improvements, et cetera. Right now it's 60-something, so it's been it's been 50 years since that one got put into place.
50 years.
Yeah, so we're in that same kind of boat. There's just a lot more stuff happening in that treatment plant, so things don't last as long. Okay, so first of all, this is just the overall summary of the capital costs.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Where does the Newtown Canal go? Where does it come from, or come from?
Comes off of Deer Creek.
Yes, Deer Creek, right below Nevada City.
Yeah.
Right,
Kind of wind.
right below the waste water treatment plant.
Yeah.
We made sure of that.
Okay, so first let's talk about this is just a summary of the alternatives so you can kind of see them all together that we talked about before. On the next slide, I'll show you a little more detail in terms of the O&M. But the current O&M cost, based on the audit that I pulled from Lake Wildwood Treatment Plant, is about $370,000 a year. And that's everything, that's labor, that's chemicals, that's electricity, et cetera. Estimated cost for alternative one, which is the original one, meaning that the treatment plant would only be operated for a couple of months out of the year. So it's only about 30% of the cost of the existing, let me back up, the existing O&M cost for the treatment plant. I reduced it to 30% of that because we're only gonna be using it for a couple months out of the year. So the chemicals usage during those months are a little higher, but overall it's still gonna be less electricity, less chemicals, et cetera. So I lowered it by to 30% of that number. And then I added, for the pipeline, we estimate about $25,000 a year for normal O&M type of work. And that's probably on the heavy end. That's a little bit of flushing, just because it's routine flushing. That's going into the PRV stations and flow control stations, doing some cleanup, adjustments, et cetera. They don't have to be out there on a daily basis, that type of thing. So those are kind of the numbers that I looked at. And so when you look at them on this sheet, what I try to do is take a look at what happens at 50 years based on these numbers. So you start to get to see there on that third number column, without taking anything into account in terms of inflationary, et cetera. If you just said it's, for item number one, it's $136,000 a year, over 50 years, you're gonna spend about $6.8 million. With the treatment plant just by itself, you're gonna spend a little over $18 million over that 50-year lifespan. And that's just typical O&M costs. They're gonna bounce around a little bit, some years higher and lower, but that gives you at least an idea what that looks like. And then the last column, I just put in 2% inflation. The feds try to shoot for that as the best case, so obviously right now that number probably doesn't pass the giggle test. But when you try to look at it over a long period, that's kind of where the Fed shoots for, so I just threw it in there to give you a feel for what that looks like. And so you can see the Lake Wildwood treatment plant by itself, cheapest upfront cost, gonna be the most in terms of your long-term O&M costs.
This slide was not.
It wasn't. This is the one I added. Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, 2% inflation, yeah, how's that working for the Fed?
Yeah, right. Again, if we're looking over a 50-year window, so you try to, I just shoot for what.
You have to use that as a comparison.
Yeah, it's just an idea what that looks like.
Numbers are still valid, and it just looks like 1 and 5 just gets awfully expensive, certainly number 5.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, a pipe doesn't require much of any maintenance, especially over a 50-year window, right? So it's not gonna cost you much in terms of that. No, 2, 3, and 4. So item 1 is both the pipe, or excuse me, alternative 1 is both the pipe and the treatment plant, but you're only needing the treatment plant for about 2 to 3 months per year. So the cost for the treatment plant is considerably less than if it was running 365. That's why that number is less.
Yeah.
I assume alternatives 2, 3, and 4, $7,500,000. Am I thinking correctly about how I figure the cost?
Yeah, that's not in there. The $7.5 million is not in those pipelines. Correct.
Already factored in.
Correct, because we're gonna eliminate, or.
That in my math.
Yeah, that mothballs, those 3 mothball the treatment plant.
To work on this.
So,
thanks, Tom.
if you do one of these, let's say the full pipeline, what do you do with the facility model?
Well, so you mean assuming we're mothballing the Lake Wildwood treatment plant?
Yeah, for any option that takes that.
Yeah, I mean, in the short term, we'd probably just mothball it, just leave it sit. We wouldn't necessarily decommission or tear it down. There'd be no need to at that point. And then there's always that potential that, you know, if you needed to deal with it in an emergency, you might be able to start it back up, depending on how long it's been sitting there and not being used. Oh, hey, Barbara.
Hey, good morning, Barbara Bashman, Valley County Contractors Association. So I just have a couple of questions and comments. First, have you looked into the grant funding that's available right now through the infrastructure federal program, and all of the other, you know, if you put fire hydrants in there, what the possibilities are, because there's a lot of grant opportunities right now.
We've looked into it. The current round has already closed for submittals, and the projects needed to be a little bit more well-baked. But in staff's perspective, it's going to be more important to try to get grant funding for Scotts Flat Spillway.
So I just would like to just comment about how we feel, you know, this project's really important to take a pipeline down to Rough and Ready Highway and option 3 and take, is there a water treatment plant in Penn Valley or?
Correct. That's a lake, we call it Lake Wildwood Treatment Plant.
But it's in Penn Valley.
Yeah, it serves all the Penn Valley area as well as Lake Wildwood
So,
proper.
you know, that's an important area, emerging area, but, you know, Penn Valley and Rough and Ready are disadvantaged communities, so there's also grant funding for disadvantaged communities, and I think that's an important thing to consider. So I would like you to consider option 3 as a priority to get that built. Thank you.
Barbara, sorry, I assume it's okay to ask her.
Yeah.
I can ask you later. Do you see a lot of building over the next 10 to 20 years in Rough and Ready?
I see Penn Valley as an emerging area that, you know, having a strong water treatment system down there, there could be a lot of growth, and probably Rich could speak to that also. But yeah, I mean, you know, we're a rural area. We're not like Lincoln that has that type of building. We're never going to have that type of building, you know. But having said that, you know, it's still important to provide water to our community. So it might not be as dense as the Lincoln area, but you know, as we don't know what the climate's going to do. Obviously, this year's a high water year, but you know, with the drought and stuff, we are going to see more wells go dry, and having the opportunity to hook up to NID water is going to be important.
Just on development side, Wildwood West, 300 and some units are all not hooked up. You got the NID Drive at Berry Creek, Rancheria, about 31 acres. Highway 20, Pleasant Valley Road. You have the whole village, Mobile Park, everything between the village and Highway 20 on wells. There's a lot of just latent demand, and they're getting pressure to have better quality water, pressure. We have, you know, a lot of, I can't remember the housing authority out of Yuba City is looking at different areas there. There's always one development in, others going in for senior people. So it is a place that's building, and it's kind of zoned for it. There's an area plan.
What does the Nevada County General Plan identify that area in terms of numbers of units to be coming online for housing? Does anybody here know? Maybe Barbara knows?
I would look at the Penn Valley area plan, and I don't have that number. The MAC completed that, the Board of Supervisors.
Jennifer, could you speak to how alternatives 1 to 4 would be financed, and potentially what the impact to other capital requirements?
Right, so there's a couple of different options, and it really depends on what the board's desire is. One option would be to fund a portion of the pipeline that could be a portion specifically to the parcels currently served within Lake Wildwood to the collective ratepayers as a whole, or you could do a zoned rate just for the Lake Wildwood areas that benefit from the pipeline. Depending on the number of new connections you think that you could connect over some reasonable time period, you could apportion the remaining amount of the project to the capacity fees. The challenge that we're having is that there are some very expensive capital projects that are of way greater priority than this project for a variety of reasons. One is Scotts Flat Spillway. We're being required by the Division of Dam Safety to replace the spillway. That project is how much money? 21 million, 20 plus $million. The rewind of Chicago Park, $16 million. And that's not in consideration of improvements that need to be made to the Combi Dam structure. We need to make modifications to the Loma Rica Dam structure and all of the other ancillary things that break and we have to fix all the time. The likelihood of us being able to fund this project under alternative STIR 1, 2, 3, or 4 within the next 5 years is probably fairly low. Another option could be that, can you roll your, go back to your prices? With that one. One option could be that we could develop a communities facility district, which would require the parcels located within the district to pass a 2/3 vote to form a finance district that would then collect assessments, and we would issue bonds on their behalf and pay the debt off with the assessments collected. That could be an option. In my experience, those can be fairly difficult to get passed. There would have to be a whole lot of community support for that particular option. You know, one of the challenges is there's a couple options. The board could say, okay, go with option 1 through 4, one of those, determine which one is the best. And it just competes year to year in the capital program, and it may or may not get funded. We will come to a point where we're gonna have to fix that plant. We can Band-Aid it together and hobble along for probably another 4 to 5 years, depending on how creative we get. But at some point, you know, that will come to roost and we'll have to deal with it. Another option would be to just move forward with option 5 and get that slated in at some point in the near future. It really is what the board desires. Knowing the current district priorities, we have not been doing replacement of treated water facility distribution lines on any routine basis for over a decade now, and that's also becoming a large issue.
So is the challenge the debt capacity for the district as a whole? Because the capital projects you've identified as the high cost items are within the hydro area, and so, I mean, so can you speak to that, our debt capacity?
So we would be forming a new financing district, and I am not concerned about our ability to bond for this project or even other projects. One of the items that with hydro alone is not going to be able to afford Scotts Flat Spillway, Chicago Park Rewind, all the other ancillary items they have to do every year, Combi, and the FERC license.
Right.
That's just not going to happen.
So you mean we're gonna have to bond those?
We will probably have some combination package of bonding versus paying cash. And we make that decision based off of financial planning in concert with our investment advisors. You always have to decide whether or not you make more money with your money on the market than the debt costs you. That's pretty expensive right now. I want to recommend that we go out right now and bond large amounts of capital projects.
You would or wouldn't?
I would not.
You would not, no.
And debt is just too expensive right now.
I think that was advice from the consultant.
Well, and that changes, right? That changes as the economy changes. So right now, debt is really expensive, and that probably will likely balance out over the next few years. Oh, sorry, Ricky?
Hey, thanks. You know, it seems to me that, you know, we've got to do the Lake Wildwood treatment plant in the short run. But wasn't there one of these alternatives that allowed for the redundancy so we would continue to have, in other words, that the $7.5 million to keep that running or to make those improvements wouldn't be lost if we then added a pipeline through one of these other routes at some point in the future when we could afford it and it competed along with the other projects? it seemed to me one of these alternatives, other than one, allowed for the redundancy.
So one does.
Only
Alternative
the
one
one.
allows for the, yeah, the alternative number one allows for the redundancy. So if you constructed alternative 5 now, it's not a throwaway project if you still wanted to build the connection at some point.
And actually, any of them could be. If you had the treatment plan online and we built any of these other options,
Right.
you could still utilize the treatment plan as well.
Yeah, I mean, it ultimately, like I said, if money was no option, then alternative 1 is a really good option. We have a money issue. So one option would be, okay, let's get 5 slated in sometime in the next 5 years and still plan on building the alternative connection if grant funding or one of these things comes up. When you go for grant funding with infrastructure bills, especially federal infrastructure bills, it's not advantageous for us to propose many projects at the same time. We want to we really need to push those gut butts away.
Right. I get that. So I don't know. It seems to me that it would be helpful to have that Lake Wildwood treatment plant there as opposed to being mothballed. And then at the point at which we are able and ready to build this pipeline, then we would have more options for how things are served and so on. I don't know. It just seemed to make sense that we should go forward with the Lake Wildwood treatment plant as soon as we can, and then continue to work on funding for the others.
So Ricky, look at the 50-year O&M, it's 32 million.
Well, I know. Yeah, I see that, Rich, but it's like, it doesn't say that we're going to keep it online for 50 years. It's just like in the short term, we got to do something. And maybe as we go through, we find that there's an alignment that is better, or maybe one of these alignments works. And then I don't know. I mean, it just seems like it would be a shame to mothball it. It would always be good to have a backup, it seems to me. And you wouldn't necessarily have to use it, for 50 years. There could be alternatives. I think, it doesn't have to be that.
And I think the difference we're really talking about is the combination of the capital column plus the O&M column.
Right.
The difference between 23 million and 39 million over 50 years. But I hear Jennifer saying we can't afford the other alternatives. I mean, that as a district with other expenses that we have and financial obligations that are regulatory related and required, that we don't really, I mean, so Ricky's alternative really lets us keep the door open on option number 1, but gets the immediate problem of the Lake Wildwood treatment plant on the books in the near term.
And the other, how many new connections, what is the maximum number of new connections we can serve with one of those alternatives?
I think it's the one, yeah.
How many was that?
1,100 and something.
So you could roughly charge about a quarter of the project to the capacity fees. So you could charge $6 million to capacity fees. Our fund balance of that fund is what, 12 million right now? So you'd be using up almost half of it for this particular project. If you chose to do that, I would recommend you wait till we're completed with the capacity fee study to make that decision or not. Was this even contemplated in there, Doug?
For the Lake Wildwood upgrade?
For the new section of pipeline. Yeah, so we could cobble together some additional funding, but we would have to go through the capacity fee study to be able to collect those fees. You can only collect capacity fees that have a direct benefit to the parcel paying them.
And that's only when that parcel actually connects to?
Correct. So we would be draining.
Over a period of time.
Or never, yeah. So we would be draining about half of the fund balance.
Do you have an idea, like, is it 50% we could expect over 10 years would connect? Or is it just...
Oh, I wouldn't even say that many. I would say probably 30% maybe. It's expensive to connect. Those capacity fees, Usually, people have difficulties coming up with the financing. They either have to have cash on hand, borrow, beg from their families, or remortgage their house.
We haven't seen any numbers even that high on the stuff we have done.
And even when we provide almost a no interest loan.
So I like what you're, oh, go ahead, Ricky.
Well, I actually have another question. Can we ever, or would we ever see these alternatives 1 through 5 probably put in the same format that we have seen our other, the CIP scoring? You know, how, you know, and where these fall in relationship to the other, you know, money that we have to spend and the other projects that we have to do? I mean, that's a piece for
Not
me
until
that's
we have it. Yeah, we wouldn't do that until, right now, that's what we're asking for, is feedback on the scope, and then it would start to compete in the normal capital process, and that's when you would see that scoring.
I see. Because it seems like doing the Lake Wildwood treatment plant, because of its condition, would score very high in the short run. Would that be a true statement, Doug?
It would compete the best.
And we've been.
Yeah, that's what I think. That
pushing
was the
to
point.
side at this point because of this option, right? So we haven't, correct. But otherwise, yeah, right, it would score very high if we had it.
It's also the most expensive.
Yeah.
It's the most expensive
Well, it's only the
over
most
time.
expensive over 50 years.
In the short
Yeah.
term.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think, that this 50-year, I'm stuck on this $33 million on the two versus 11 for alternative number 1. That both includes the treatment, correct?
Correct.
So somewhere I missed the memo about why that number is lower.
So for alternative 1, it's because we would only operate it for 2 to 3 months out of the year in the peaking. We would feed the system otherwise throughout the rest of the year with just a pipe. So less chemicals, less electricity, et cetera.
I never excelled at business planning. Looking at that, okay, this is where the number crunchers come in.
We don't have all the numbers, so to clarify your number, you were saying you could charge $6 million to connection fees. That's your anticipated 25% of the 1,200 or 1,100 people might connect. Is that what that number came from?
Yeah, so you're draining half of the fund, and there's other commitments for that fund.
So whatever that amount is, 6 million or less, that can come off the top. Anything that we found for matching funds with the government would come off that. Then you gotta put the rest out to debt, and that we don't have. It's what is that debt every year? Like, we don't have enough to pick one. We probably need to pick a couple and get more data over a 20, 30, 50-year period to understand what this is really gonna cost.
I think, though, we have to be keeping in our minds that what can we afford right now is, I agree with you, there's the picture of what is the most advantageous and economical way to approach this project. Then there's reality. What can we afford, you know? And I think that's where we're at a bit of, because I think we have different answers. If we're gonna go for affordability, then we pick one option, and so what we can pay for. But if we were to look at the long-term economic best investment, we'd probably pick something else. And I think that's where maybe we don't have the full picture of what the nexus is between those two things. But ultimately, you can only afford what you can afford.
So even with the debt service, the reality of getting grants is not as good as we all tend to want to think it is. I don't have large hopes of getting grants. That we always look at it as a, benefit on the top. So if you just look at it from a debt service perspective, even at a reasonable percentage, which it is not right now, they would still cost about $18 per ratepayer in Lake Wildwood a month. And that's if I take the money off the top and pay for the new connection portion with capacity fees. There are other projects that may be of more importance for capacity fees that we haven't talked about yet, so you would really want to go through that process. Because this project wasn't included in the original capacity fee, so it wasn't accounted for when we were calculating those fees that were being paid.
Your point being that the balance in that fund, you believe there are higher priority items that would eat it up?
Probably.
Well, and I think there's a principle, I mean, do we
Go ahead.
take off half of the capacity fee study to accommodate one project?
Right.
What's the principle of doing that? And it's to make the project more viable, but is it a principle that we would apply to other potential projects to make a project go?
Well, what if we do this? Why don't, hearing all of the feedback, and it sounds like more information is needed, why don't we do some additional work on the capacity fee study and come back with some more information related to what the capacity fees were collected for and what they're slated for and planned for, and then we can give you a better perspective on the utilization of those particular funds.
So I like the way you're thinking on the capacity piece, because I do think they fit in here. And I like the fact that we're saving $370,000 a year, and that will escalate by mothballing the Wildwood plant. And I think alternative number 3 is the preferred one for the people in Rough and Ready, Penn Valley, and Wildwood. I would also like to bring up the fact that if we get a shovel-ready project, we have no idea what's going to come down the road, what opportunities to make this happen. But I'd like to point out that the ad valorem 1% tax that NID receives from Nevada County is around $11,669,000. And plus we get more from Placer County. And we have sitting out there 2 disadvantaged, underserved communities that have been paying in for decades and not receiving service. So I think we can frame it all we want, but that's the nutshell. People have been paying into a system, they're not getting service. And I understand we don't treat, for me, the 1% property tax ad valorem distribution should be for capital improvements, capital projects. That's what I think people intended when they pay into this. It shouldn't go to subsidized water rates. So once we look at that, and what is the Penn Valley, Wildwood, and Rough and Ready contribution share of that? Yeah, they're going to benefit from Scotts Platte spillway being redone, but they're going to benefit more from this. And I just think you cannot deny the fact of 2 disadvantaged, underserved communities paying in, and not getting anything in return. So I think there's money there. We just need to cobble it. And I just love alternative number 3.
Do we know how many people pay into the property tax that don't get service?
Yeah, so I just want to explain about property taxes just a little bit. So the ad valorem taxes are referencing the 1% that is taxed against an assessed value. On an annual basis, the assessed value can only maximum be increased by 2%. That whole pie does not come to NID. It is split amongst many agencies, most of which is the school system and the Educational Realignment Fund. We receive a very tiny sliver of those taxes. Property taxes are your most flexible revenue that you receive, that you do not have to demonstrate that there is a special benefit to the property owner paying the property tax. I would not recommend that we start down the road of a policy that everybody that pays property tax needs some type of special benefit from the payment of the property tax, because those are referred to as general benefit revenues. So for example, you pay into the school system, but you may not have any children that are in the school system. The entire society receives a general benefit. The entire community in all of the counties, they receive a general benefit from water being present. Otherwise, there would be no residents, business, economy, schools, all those things would essentially collapse. So I wouldn't recommend that we go down that policy route. It can be very, very sticky to do so. From an accounting perspective, all of the property tax revenue goes into Fund 10. Fund 10 is the parent fund, that's the water fund, of Fund 15, which is the capital fund. So from the purposes of accounting and the annual financial audit, Fund 15 rolls up into its mothership of Fund 10. So there is no kind of earmarking of property tax for any specific purpose, whether it be operation or capital. It goes into the water fund. When we set rates, we look at the combined required expenditures of operating and capital together. So we're not necessarily subsidizing water rates. It is just a revenue that goes into the water fund.
And I would point out that, it was a practice but not a policy of the board to use property taxes for capital.
And you were never using property taxes for capital improvement. What you were saying was you were going to set your capital expenditure limits or values equal to that of the property tax revenue you receive, which is a totally different thing, right?
Right, and which
Okay.
I can agree with.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just saying that perception, that, you know, why should I even be part of this district if I'm not receiving service? And so we have chunks of out-of-district places. We sell water, I mean, how can we sell water to an out-of-district community, 2 of them, when our own community is not being serviced? That's the reality. And it has a lot of support down in Rough and Ready, Penn Valley, Wildwood.
That case law is very sound. I am not worried about the risk associated with the property tax conversation.
Not concerned with that. Reality is, we got communities not being served where we're serving other communities that are not even in the district paying us property taxes.
So we are serving raw water. I think if we go along those lines, the bigger moral question would be related to the city of Lincoln. There's about 7,000 homes or parcels within our district boundaries that do not have any opportunity to receive treated water. We have 5 customers in that area that actually receive water from us.
That pay property tax.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It is
I
worth
just
life.
think that that whole issue is, I mean, I think that's a legitimate point, Rich. I think the reality, though, is that we all pay taxes. Dustin said it one time, you pay taxes and you don't see a benefit. I mean, do I care that my federal taxes are going to support the military? I don't have children, but I readily support our educational system. So I just think that's the reality of taxes. And,
It's the same fire department. Same reality.
yeah, I mean, so I get the point, but I think that's, we're not gonna make a nexus there, is my opinion.
We have been currently spending, about $6 to $7 million a year on water capital, and we're collecting how much in property taxes?
$11,669,000.
Do you know how much we'd have to raise rates if all that went to capital, just to cover operational expenditures?
Right.
I
Point that we talked, okay.
Understood. But what's the most expensive thing besides a politician in America is water, and it's going up. And, I mean, water has become so precious, and fire, insurance is based on it, property values are based on it, and it's everything to food supply, security, and everything. I just think that if we, just forewarning, if we need to raise rates so we can guarantee water to our customers, we're gonna have to.
I think that we're probably gonna be in the position of having to raise rates regardless of this project.
Understood?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
How about this? I have heard a lot of really good feedback. Why don't we put together a little bit more information and potential financing plans for option 5, 3, and 1 and bring it back?
Good, and then can you talk about 2 other related things? One would be, how feasible is it to form that community development district that would isolate the cost to the community area that's benefiting from it? And then just reflect for us the principle around that, because we haven't done that. I mean, we've done the community development districts for very isolated projects, but this is like the Lake Wildwood treatment plant that seems to me to be a district obligation versus maybe the pipeline becomes the community development district obligation. Anyway, I'd like you to just kind of conceptualize that for us, and then what's the principle of that as we would apply it to other parts of the district?
Yeah, so we currently have two assessment districts within our district, Rodeo Flat and Cement Hill. It's definitely a doable option, but it needs significant community support. And if there is a lot of community support, it's definitely doable. It's an easy financing mechanism. The difficult part is that I would recommend as opposed to a special benefit district, there's community facilities districts and then there's special benefit districts. Right. Special benefit districts have a different voting structure and a lower threshold for adoption of the district, which is about 50%. And the parcel owners are able to vote proportional to the amount that they would pay for their assessment. The challenge with special benefit districts is that you have to, on an annual basis, demonstrate that there is a special benefit that is proportional to what they're paying for the parcel owner classes that are paying it. A community facilities district has a little bit, it's an assessment district that doesn't have the special benefit requirement. It's a little bit easier to administer on an ongoing basis. But the challenge is that it has a higher threshold for voter approval, so it's about 2/3 of a vote. I think it's a viable option for the ratepayer or the hard part is the new connection, as you stated. I would tend to agree that the upgrade of the Lake Wildwood treatment plant would be a ratepayer function. The secondary connection or the new connection, we could possibly make it specific to a special district or community facilities district. It could be difficult to get the vote passed because you're still talking about a fairly hefty amount their bill is going to raise for their assessment on an annual basis. So it would be about $25 to $26 a month moving forward with an escalating factor in there. So that would increase over time as well.
Let me point out, this is a collateral benefit, it's not part of the reason for putting a pipe too.
Yes, my understanding that we are looking for a secondary connection to, yeah.
Right. So there's value, should be value in how we gauge the tenor of Rough and Ready and Penn Valley area. Support for that, recognizing this is without a plan benefit, right?
So if we quickly run the numbers, capacity fees, we pull $6 million from there. We take, instead of upgrading the district, the plan itself, we take 7.5 there. And now we have 13.5, and then we're looking at 370 a year for 50 years. That's 18,750,000 or 500,000. So now we're right up to the 50-year cost of number 3, a little bit over, and something we can finance.
Well, we're gonna come back
Just kind of putting it out there.
I think, can we have Ricky to have a chance for one more comment, and then we'll wrap it up?
Okay.
Ricky, do you wanna, we need you to unmute. Ricky, unmute. Ricky, we can't hear you. Hello? Hello? No, can't hear you. Can't hear a thing. No, not working for you?
Can you unmute her? Oh, there she goes.
Can you guys unmute me?
Yep.
Can you hear me yet? No? Oh, you can. Okay, thank you. I've kind of almost forgotten my thing, but I wanted to make 2 points, or actually ask a question that when you come back, Rich, your and Barbara's comment about Rough and Ready being an economically disadvantaged area, I understand that and I agree. And I'm wondering if just putting the pipeline in, that doesn't address bringing the laterals or whatever to the actual homeowner who's disadvantaged. If they're disadvantaged, they're not going to be able to afford to pay for those pipe runs and all those other things. And so I'm wondering, when we're counting how many people we can serve that would be disadvantaged, how do we allow for or account for those extra costs to actually get the water from the pipe to their home. Right? Because my guess is this 23 million or 25 million does not take into account any pipe runs into the individual homeowners. Is that correct?
Correct. There's
Okay.
the cost of the additional infrastructure and the cost of the capacity fees.
Right.
It would likely
And so,
be unattainable for most people.
well, that's what I wondered. It's like, so I just want to think about that and have that be present in our thoughts. And then, Rich, I wanted to, sort of give support and remind us all that when we were talking about the DFW-LE, and I made the comment about the property tax, people paying property taxes, not getting services, the board really felt like that wasn't valid for all the reasons Jen said, and I've come to agree with that. So it's like, well, it can't apply to one and not to the other. So if we're, the property taxes are a general benefit, and I get it. But I'm really concerned about, routing the pipeline through an area because it's economically disadvantaged, but without anybody being able to hook up because they're economically disadvantaged. It doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you.
That's all. Just wanted to think about that.
Okay, and with that, how about taking a 5-minute break? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break and come back at 11:20. We're live. Okay. We're going to move now to our workshop on our communication plans with Greg taking the lead on that.
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. We're still in morning. Yes, we made it. Okay, we're gonna go through a communications plan. Board wanted to bring an item of kind of what we're doing, what we have been doing over the last year, kind of where we're going this year. I have with us Titanium Inc., which is our consultant who's been helping us a lot with our social media outreach over the last year and a half. Tyler Campbell is the CEO and owner of Titanium, and Natalia Poloprutska is on the line with us as well. She's been helping us a lot with our advertisements and putting some various slides together and videos. And of course, the other part of our team is Susan Lauer, who's here with us and really been behind the scenes doing a whole bunch. So a huge thank you to Susan for everything she's done, certainly over the last many years. So we have a short presentation. We thought we'd maybe do it last night during the Plan for Water, but doing it today, which is just fine. So I would say, Tyler's going to go through a lot of data, and there's a lot of graphs, etc. If you have questions, they might be answered as he goes through the presentation. But clearly, if you have something that comes up and you want to focus on something on the presentation, please feel free to jump in, as I know you would. Okay, so we're going to go through just a little bit about what we did last year. So a review of 2022, some of the growth expectations that we had, and some of the successes that we feel like we had. I mean, communications, marketing, overview. I mean, one of the first things I told Tyler early on was we're not selling. Going into social media, sometimes businesses are thinking, well, we need our social media profile to sell our product. We're not selling a product. What we're trying to do is build educational awareness with our communities. So we're building the education. We're bringing people to our website. We're trying to engage them in our Plan for Water process. That was the original idea with bringing Titanium in. Their skill set and background has sort of morphed into other avenues that have helped us bringing the message to the community and having more messages this year as we progress. So we'll talk a little about that as well. Table of contents, we're going to go through just kind of high overview of what it is we're trying to focus on in the communications plan, our objectives, some of the channels that we've been engaged in. Really, we're not engaged in a lot of communications, social media channels up until probably 3 or 4 years ago at the very earliest. And so that growth from the NID perspective is something that we really were not doing up until recently. Tyler's gonna go through a series of examples of some of the posts, some of the reports that they have created, comparisons between Q1 and Q2 in terms of growth, and then a quick overview of what we're looking at for the next year. So really, in this plan, we want to support NID's mission, vision, and values. We just went through the strategic plan. Thank you for the adoption. We are utilizing that as a foundation for how we want to engage in the community, and we really want to bring the mission, vision, and value through the use of NID social media and communication opportunities to our community to engage, educate, and bring people to us. And we want to talk to them wherever they are and however they can communicate with us. It doesn't have to be right here in the board meeting anymore. It's outside of the normal structure. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Tyler, who's going to go forth and give us a handful of slides on where we've been in 2022 and what we're looking like right now in the first quarter of 23.
Go forth and conquer?
Go forth and conquer.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me out. I appreciate it. And just for everybody that's wondering, this is real. Here it is real. And I'm bummed everybody left. Am I going to get questions? Because I'm nowhere as interesting as what you guys just went over.
We had a great audience.
Yeah.
We're out there.
I wanted questions. Okay, so just to kind of frame a little bit, at some point y'all decided to bring me in and you want to know what's been working for the past year. So to kind of frame it, that's what we want to talk about as what our goal was, what steps did we put in place, and what was the result, right? And taking that as we slingshot into 2023.
As the new person on the board, could you give us a little background of who you are?
Oh, yeah. So Tyler Campbell, CEO, founder of Titanium Ideas. It's a digital marketing firm. I am from Lincoln, so I live there. So part of the water there, I have some property in Smartsville, so we're on a well, so I'm kind of tuning into a lot of this, and I'm newer to it. We've got a 10-person team. We focused on the full 360 as it relates to digital marketing, right? What's crafting the story, executing it, and then getting people back to whatever it is that we want to get them back to, like a website or to take a purchase, and then rinse and repeat and report. So we were brought on, like Greg said, to go and get the message out. And so usually when people come to us, people being clients, they're like, I want to sell something, buy something, help me sell sandwiches, get my people into my gym. This one was different, right? So what we were tasked to do is go, how do we go and engage with the constituents in NID's area and get them to know what you do, how you do it, get them on board with a lot of those, I guess, initiatives. So our communication channel, did I answer your question?
Yes.
Do I have any others? No, okay. Okay, so our communication channels was to go out on social media where people are. I mean, people say, or when they ask what we do, we go, we're digital fishing guides. We want to go craft a message, we're going to go fishing. And so all those channels that you saw there, the LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, we are looking to serve up that message and put it right in front of them. So a lot of what we were tasked to do was to get people engaged into the post. Now, what's interesting about this is, I don't know how much you know about the social media algorithms, but when you have a person do something, it's called a signal, right? To like something, that is a human interaction with that platform. To share something and to comment, that actually takes effort, right? So that now opens up algorithmically those platforms. So when we're going out, I mean, to be a utility, nobody's really commenting unless you stir something up. So our goal was to get them back to the website to go look at everything that we're doing. So a lot of what you're seeing here is the results from these posts. We go out into your area to go and snap pictures, create videos. Susan and Greg have done a great job tapping into everybody that is a part of NID, and we want to showcase that. So you'll see here, in one of the examples, is you've got 3 comments, people talking about it, but the 56 shares. That's very important. Your people, the fans, are actually picking that up and sharing it. Why would they do that with their water? Are they sharing it within groups? Are they sharing it to each other? Are they sending instant messages? That's a very valuable thing to know. The content we're creating, what we're telling them, is actually getting in front of their eyeballs. The second one there, am I doing this one? No, the other one. Aha, yeah, wrong way. So, another thing to note too, when we are looking at, is the content we're creating effective, we're tracking all the links that are in the specific post. You'll see there the shortened link. We want to see that people are clicking that because we're going to know if they're going back to the website. When it comes to the social media platforms, we look at what is a gauge. Is it working or not? And you'll see here we've got the post impressions and then the reach. Those are very big numbers for what it is that you do and your size area. So they might not be commenting per se, but what they're doing is actually engaging with it. It's seeing it, right? The people are seeing all the posts. A lot of the times, you know, the platforms are a PPC, a paid or pay per click. So what's interesting about all this is all organic, by and large. So people are hungry for it. They want to be informed. And that's basically, in a nutshell, what we've been doing is going, here is what your plan for water is. So, yeah.
Can you tell me the difference between a post impression and post reach?
Yeah, so an impression is what the individual fan will see, right? The reach is how far in your friend group or your friend network it will be. So if you like my post of my kid and you see it and you like, now you're going to see it and you're going to see and you're going to see the post. So strategically, what we want to do is to get more people liking it because they're friends. It's called friend of mine awareness. They'll see it and they go, "Ooh, what's going on with NID? Oh, they did this over in NID." And with the snow and everything going on, it's very important that we do that.
Brown violation.
Right. Don't like.
That's right. Don't like each other's likes or each other's posts.
Yes.
Very good point.
Hand slapped a month or two ago.
Gently, though.
I don't know what
The nudge.
Don't do it.
So Tyler,
Yeah.
I have to answer to a very harsh, a very on-spot critic.
Okay.
All right. So when you get, last year, she said that, you know, NID was doing about an inch above ground.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're waist high. A lot of kudos. That's a huge compliment.
Awesome.
And I wonder if it was, last year we're using stock photos.
Mm-hmm.
This is now real in-person photos.
Yep.
Which really catches the imagination. Big improvement.
Thank you.
And,
I had a great time going through the canals in my boots to get the videos that we just did, so.
you're leading right to, but I won't bring it up now, but you're leading exactly to a point I'll make later. Are you on Peeps?
Am I on Peeps?
Yeah, are you?
It's like
posting
a
on Peeps?
Oh.
some type of local page.
It is.
Oh,
I don't
no.
think we are.
Is that in?
How everybody communicates in Nevada County.
Okay, all right.
Everybody.
Natalia, if you're out there, can you please take a note of Peeps?
Well, Chris.
Nevada County Peeps.
Is that a group within Facebook?
It's a group.
Oh, well, the way you said it, I thought it was its own
No,
platform.
it's
Okay,
not.
it's a group. Okay, got you. Okay.
I've never seen it. Are there any agencies that are on it? I don't have Facebook.
So let me address that real quick.
Will you know about it? Peeps?
Is there public agencies on Peeps? No. Usually group
She's
Facebook
probably not.
pages like that don't let agencies participate.
But
Right,
this
agencies
is-
are not on Peeps. And there's Grass Valley, Nevada City, and Nevada County Peeps. There's 3 different ones. And they usually do not have agencies. They're all people. Probably the most active is a woman who monitors the sheriff's and the Grass Valley PD sites and posts at, pretty quickly as somebody gets arrested or charged with something. But most of it.
So typically
that's-
within groups,
Yeah.
that's exactly it.
You just hit on something. The Nevada County Sheriff's site is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's because people like crime
Yeah,
It's more than
love
that. It's
crime.
supporting everybody.
and mugshots.
Yeah, it's not like
We could do water waster mugshots.
we could, or those who are serving.
Well, I will tell you that's good. And as a agency or a business profile, that's depending on the rules, you cannot post in a group. So then a person, we'd have to go in and do it. Now, the thing is, a lot of those shares are probably being shared in there, which is awesome, right? Now, to go back to your point about the pictures, everybody loves the story. If it's all just stock, it doesn't bring the people into the story. So the more we do that, the more they're going to engage with it. Hence the videos and not starting anything, but asking questions. What do you think about this? I heard post after post after post of what we can get started conversationally. And that is strategic to get people and share the conversation so that they pick it up. And that's what I'm assuming here, that they're going to pick it up and they're going to share it with them. Did you just see what NID posted? That's a great thing. So glad to hear that.
What we've done in the last number of months is we've reached out to we've asked many of the staff, when they're in the field, when they're doing a work, please take a photograph. Let us know where you are, what you're doing, and so we've received a whole bunch of photographs from district employees just out in the field, and that's what you can see here in these posts, and has done a huge wonder from the stock photographs to the actual real life, what are our staff doing? And so kudos and thank you to the staff for continuing to send Susan photographs because they're great.
I may or may not have got some of us in here today. I've got some pictures of us meeting today.
Yeah, one of the challenges with the peeps is most of staff, I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody, we're not big I don't do social media, I don't think, Greg. One of us would have to share it to peeps.
Over 30 doesn't.
Anybody over, I am way over 30.
Let me address that.
If one of you wanted to share to peeps, you could share to peeps.
Right. I always share mine to peeps. I do, just to get the extra exposure. So I'll pick this up and share it, and I'll put it on my site, which then links to peeps. So I do that every time I see one of these, which is excellent. These things you're doing are fabulous.
Great, awesome. Well, and the key point to stress is it's organic. We're not paying for this. And when we do have some ad dollars going to it, but that's a huge component.
Katie, just a point, Katie, we've lost I think this battery went out, so can you just advance when Tyler asked you?
Next slide, please. Always wanted to say that from board meeting.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so this is more just on the back end, and that's what we wanted to show you. You go, oh, this is great, right? The people are seeing it, but what's the actual true metrics? And you can see the impressions, the reach, and the engagement. So we look at this in regard to sentiment. If all of a sudden we're going to post a very controversial topic because we want people to start talking about it, you're going to see these angry faces. So then we'll be able to know, and I mean, it kind of substantiates what everybody knows in the media right now. Are we manipulated? Yeah, but if you do it strategically and you do it obviously to accomplish your mission, it can work. Next slide. This was another post that we did. It was a video, so videos do very, very well. We got the information about the Osprey, was it a relocation, I believe it was, or moving on that?
Down.
Yeah.
Poor guy burned in.
Everybody loved that. So, I mean, it's just an example here. You can see it got a lot of traction. Next slide. Yeah, so a lot of people were watching this. We got a lot of, let's see, 15-second views. That's good. Typically, people, when they're watching it, will only go to about 3 seconds. I mean, we all know you can look at yourself in videos unless it's something super that you're into. But it did perform very well, which tells us, too, I mean, we are creatures that are super ADD just by and large, especially in this media world. It's got to go fast. So videos will do a lot more to slow people down than text. So we want to do a lot more of those. Our plan going forward is to go out and get a lot more drone footage, lakes and farms and just the use of, and really kind of bring that component into the content. Next slide. This is the video. We actually won't play it because it'll open up on a different screen, so you can go do next slide. But if you got it emailed to you, it's clickable in the presentation, which I'm sure you probably already have seen.
It's on the NID website too, if you haven't seen it. It's only about 2 minutes long.
Next slide. Yeah, so just some more stats with regards to YouTube. It was obviously watched. We got 66 views, and this was screenshotted, gosh, right after. It's got a whole lot more than that. But if you want any of the stats, we can get them for you. Every time we share on all the platforms, this video is going to get obviously seen more. And resonates with everybody that you guys are doing good things. Next slide.
And I just want to underscore, I mean, 66 views, those of you in the media world, 66.
Yeah, right.
Right, whoa. Well, the reality is we've been running at 0 for decades. 0. Right, and we're only, and anyway, Tyler will go into the growth projections, but they, you know, in the hundreds, maybe in the teens, maybe in the tens, but the goal is to continue. We're not gonna build this in, you know, Rome in a day. It's over the trajectory.
Building that channel is kind of a key part of it. Yeah, exactly.
You're right, absolutely. It's hard to get to 0 if you're not doing anything.
Okay, so let's go back. So this is the growth. Like you said, when we first got here, it was at, what'd you say, ankle high, and now we're waist high. So this shows you that for our likes, followers, and the post, there has been a constant and steady growth, which is what you want. Now, when we talk about this, there's growth just by growth's sake. And that's if you're gonna dump a bunch of money to go get fans' eyeballs, which can be strategic, totally great. But because of who you are, the time you've been around, and where you're going, the organic component of it is way more important. That's why we are proud of this. When you see, you know, 100%, 110% growth, 183 points posts, plus your 10% growth month over month with the year, that's huge. Because that is a constant. Everybody who lives in the area that are on the platforms are starting to see and engage. Now, with LinkedIn, of course, we all have a LinkedIn profile. What's the point of LinkedIn, right? It is the professionals, the people that are going to be out and engaging with you guys. So having an active presence with posts is very important. Again, you'll see that with the call to action of want to learn more, want to see more, go to the website, why that's important when we go over the website analytics. This is going to be Instagram, which I love Instagram, but every platform has got to be applicable to what you're trying to do, right? Now, this is another one too. We were active on Google My Business. Do you guys want to know what Google My Business is? So if you can see the positive growth there, a lot of people are searching you. They are Googling. So having this active is bringing more people to your website, right? So if you are present there, why would they be going to your website? Is there bills? Is there news? They're trying to look for updates? Do you guys, have you seen an interest or an increase in people driving to your location? So the huge component of Google My Business is actually directions.
Really?
And calls.
Oh.
Well, we get a lot of.
We might have had one individual who had to Google it several times, but.
Well, the fact that that's growing, it totals a lot. So this is your total website views. When we look at 2022, before it was, like I said, there was not a lot of traffic, but we've grown it quite a bit. You've got 317,000 page views. Your average time on your page is a minute 35. That tells me that people are actually reading, and that's an average. You've got a bounce rate of 68. I believe, if I remember correctly, that your 21, and we could look at it, was higher. Do you know what the bounce rate is? So anytime you get on a website, percentage-wise, when you bounce off, it does an average of that. So if you're looking for directions, your website's bounce rate might be 98%, which would be like, oh man, nobody's staying on that. But if the user is getting what they want, they're off. Right? Now take a recipe. You want to learn how to make a recipe or something, you're going to be on there longer. So a initiative was to keep people on your website longer, hence the content that we wrote. People are reading. A lot of these videos going on there, they're going to stay there and see what you're doing. That's where they'll go for updates. So here's your, and usually, you know, when we're creating digital reports, I want to say something awesome. The next question will be like, well, why is that awesome, right? So we wanted to kind of dive in a little bit. When it comes to your website pages, I always want to know is where's everybody going? Now, typically, you're going to have your home page, but if you look next to your job openings and welcome to human resources, a lot of people are looking for jobs, right? So this gives us insight going, how do we wrap your story about what you're doing in the community? Well, let's do how many jobs are we affecting? Like, what are the good we're doing in the community as it relates to HR kind of that gives people that warm, fuzzy feeling as we push those out on the social media platforms. This might be a little bit smaller to see, but when it comes to the home page, or actually a lot of the content pages, then next would be the source and medium. Where are people coming from? So this kind of breaks it down. If you see that little line there, that just means the home page. But if you'll notice, the source and medium next to that is going to be your organic. And then number 3, organic. Payments are number 4, and then you've got your Google job, or sorry, your job openings. Organic Google, organic Bing, Scott's Flat. So now, if you kind of go down, I would suspect, and could probably pull this cyclically, when, like, so springtime right now, everybody's looking for camping spots and what to do. That's when a lot of these pages pop up organic. So we've grown this quite a bit. Visitor location. Obviously, you are in a unique area that people would only be concerned because they live in this area. When we target a lot of the posts that are on the platforms related to hashtags and some of the ad spend, you'll see that it's actually working within your area. What's interesting is the Sacramento area. This breaks down on another slide that you'll see people that are searching are coming. Actually, you got a lot from the Bay Area. So interesting. It just kind of tells you data going who's looking and why. You had, I mean, I can nerd out on this stuff just because it's super interesting to me. My guys might be like, all right, stop talking. But if you look at each place, there's going to be a different time on site and a bounce rate. So the location corresponds to who's interested in what they are reading to. So obviously number 2 is going to have your 52%, which is just about the lowest, and then your average site on time, or your average site duration is 2 minutes 37. So people in your area are reading the stuff on the website that's applicable and pertaining to them. So, I mean, I don't know where this lands. I'll talk to Greg and Susan, but everything that I heard about the questions is blog content and posts. Because if they're asking the questions, this is the tip of the iceberg, that everybody's probably asking the same thing. So how can we utilize that to get that dialogue going?
Jealous of our water?
Yeah, could be. You know, a lot of that is just for a short, I mean, you're never going to know just because of privacy, right, when you get on websites and all that. But it could be bots. It could be VPNs. You know, who has a VPN that lives up there that's from LA or San Francisco, right? Not only that, the secondary, and this is when you kind of have to take the data hat and go, all right, let's think logically in real time. Who's moving here? If everybody's bouncing out of the big cities and they're all coming up here, and this is where, you know, when we have our meetings, we go, what are you seeing? What is everybody saying? Where are people coming from? Now, if you want to go and affect that, now we can serve up content into that area. Realtors love to do this stuff. That's why you have all the ad spends in the Bay Area to come up here. Is the realtor in here? Okay. Okay, so now we've got the comparisons here. So your website views, I know the graph looks like it's down, but it's actually up quite a bit, which is obvious because it wasn't really doing anything in 2021, and obviously we've been just putting gasoline on the fire in 22 and going into 23. You can see that it's quite a bit of growth. So this is your active users. Again, this is just nerdy stuff, but we break it down going into 1 day, 7, 14, 28, which is good because we want to have a lot of people coming back frequently, thus the 28-day active users. And again, coming back into the cyclicality of people, when are you paying bills? What's happening on a monthly basis? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? If we are pumping out information that this just happened, that just happened, they are going to go to the website. User demographic, this is interesting for us, and the reason being is, this is a side note, people go, oh, what do you do? I go, I'm a professional stereotyper, professional stalker, right? And it's because we craft messages with who's there. So if you can see through 2022, we had the male-female, but you can see the shift, right, and the ages. So this informs and helps us, and when I say us, it's the agency, but also we're very aware that we are NID's voice. So due to age, are we more staunch and this is our area and we love Grass Valley? Or are you trying to now be cooler just because the 20s, the 30s, the 40s are in? We have to look at that, right? And make those changes and then come back to you guys and say, all right, it worked.
How do you collect this user demographic? How do you know a computer user's 26 versus 80?
Google. This is all from Google.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you go and this is the creepier side is the social media, right? This is all your IP info. So like right now, if I have a Gmail, I put all my information, and it knows that I'm going to go, and when I'm using Chrome and I'm going onto different websites, it knows how old I am and just the information that I gave it. And then from there, it kind of surmises and makes assumptions on everything else.
You click accept all cookies. Our companies are taking that.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, okay, all right.
Well, yeah, and this is just on the Google side on the website. So like I said, it gets crazier and creepier on the social side, but that's a whole other topic.
All right.
Don't get me started on TikTok. Okay, so going into the user location, so you can see here, in 22, when we came on board, it was let's start telling everybody in our area. Now, naturally, and this goes back to what you were saying about the impressions. Y'all who has family in other parts of the state? Y'all do? Okay, I missed it. So anytime you are engaging with these, guess who's seeing them? And that's why you're seeing a surge in other parts of the state. Now, that's strategic. I want that to happen as the agency, as the one who's trying to get that, because I want people to see it and ripple that out. So that's the reason why a lot of the results in the comments, the shares, the like, that's all important. Okay, another one, new versus returning visitors. So 2022, you can see the new was 75 and returning was 24. So that's great. That was a baseline. But look what we did going into 23. Now we're getting new people back, so new eyeballs, right? So now as we go into getting new eyeballs, that kind of catapults us into 2023 going, all right, we got all these new people, now what? Now let's talk to them, now let's engage, now let's ask questions, now let's, all this video, all the content that we're putting together.
Am I reading that wrong?
What?
Well, the returning visitor in 23 was 14.9%, but in 22 is 24.2.
Yeah, so to break it down, 2022, go get new eyeballs. So that was the big push.
So it's just a percentage, not numbers.
Correct. And that's 23 as in what, Jan to March. So that number is going to grow at the end of 2023. Right? Because we want to go get new eyeballs to go and engage with your brand. And then once they're there, now let's bring them back. Why would someone come back?
Right.
So the goal would be almost, awesome to have growth on all of them, but if you almost had like a 80-20, 70-30 split. Right, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'd be happy because that's what you guys want. You want more eyeballs on all of your platforms and then people coming back. Oops, no.
So, just kind of closing out 2023 as we move forward, we've tasked Tyler and his team to look at, and Susan and everything she's working on, because we've got multiple channels, yet we've got multiple mediums, right? We have the social media platform, we have our website, we also have direct mail, we also have direct email campaigns that we work on. We have, news releases, right, exactly. So there's a handful of different methods and mediums that we're getting out into the community in order to bring our objectives and our word and our communications to the community. So our overarching brand, we're working on these 5 ideas. This is the kind of messaging that we want to bring to the community, which is our reliability, right? We've delivered water for 100 years. We want to talk about that history. We want to, in everything that we give out, we want to be able to bring back to the community. We've been here reliably for you for 100 years. Let's continue to build a reliable system for the next 100 years. We have to bring value to the community. So we're bringing a high-quality water, recreation, and electricity experience to our customer base and to our community as a whole. So we're bringing that into the conversation with every communication effort that we're trying to make. We have a customer service and we have an operations that is out there in the world and in your backyards. We're here every day, 24/7, 7 days a week, right? So the many faces of NID are at your service. That's sort of our push to bring our staff to this conversation within the community. Their faces, they're in the mud, they're in the canal mucking out things. They're, you know, at the treatment plant doing the necessary tooling.
Training.
The trainings, the different trainings that we're putting our staff through in order to make sure that they're safe and our communities are safe moving forward. We're stewards. That's another message that we're bringing forth. We're stewards of the environment. We're stewards of our watersheds. We're stewards of our resources. And then we're always accessible. We have customer service. We are one of the only utilities in the area that you can just walk in. We are accessible every 2 board meetings a month. People can walk in here and talk to us, talk to you about what it is they're doing and their problems. They can call us. We're accessible. So those are the 5 sort of objectives that we're trying to bring into 2023's messaging campaigns. And here are the various campaigns. So within that, we've developed 6 different campaigns that we're looking to constantly feed into our communications mediums. One is just the overall cost of delivering the reliable water. We've talked about this many times through our strategic plan, through the various capital improvement programs, our hydro FERC relicensing program. I mean, the cost of delivering reliable water is profound, and we want to make sure that our customers are reading that and they're being educated on that. Climate change brings new challenges. Our system was built on a climate from the early 1900s. We're going to learn more about that as Plan for Water progresses in the next couple of meetings, but this system that we have at our door is built at a time when we experienced large amounts of snowpack throughout June and into July, and it was the runoff. We may be experiencing different challenges in the future, so we want to talk about that. We want to give people that experience and that education. Our aging infrastructure, we don't want to shy away from that. We want to show people those corroded pipes. We want to show people the breaks, right? We want to show our guys at 3 a.m. repairing the Ridge Road sinkhole, right? That is the cost of doing the business. That is a cost that the customers rely upon NID for, and we're here for them. The value of the water, Rich, you mentioned earlier that the cost of water is increasing. We have an extremely affordable water structure at NID. We are so lucky. And so we want to show people that the value of their water is incredibly important. And it's really good value for the water that they get, even though we're entering into a rate Prop 218 structure this year, and we're going to have to be talking about that later on. We want to bring that communication and educate the customers that their value of receiving either treated or raw water is incredibly good. Again, we want to show employees at work. We've got staff out, or Susan's going out. People are taking photographs. We're having Tyler and his staff go out with drones. And we want to show our staff in the middle of wherever we are, talking to customers, working with customers, doing everything we can out in the world. And then, of course, water conservation and promoting that message with Casey and her team and ops on water conservation throughout. So those are really like the overarching campaigns that we've got going on in 2023. So all of our messaging should route towards one of these six campaign messages and also one of these 5 overarching brand identifications at any one of our mediums that we put out at any given time of the year. And I think, executive summary, 2022.
Nailed it.
Thank you to Tyler, Susan, team, mission accomplished. I think we've done a pretty good job last year. think we're moving into this year with a focus on education and engagement. We're hoping to bring those numbers higher as we go forth, and we'll have more reporting on that towards the end of the year, first quarter of next year. But so far, so good, and questions? That's it. Rich?
Yeah, so the budget this year is how much?
So it's roughly $65,000 for all consulting fees. That's not our contract with Titanium.
What's the contract with?
It's $45,000, I believe, for just under shy of 50,
Something like that.
per year.
Okay. And it seems to me we're very successful when we have somebody kind of in-house or somebody here more often. How much more would that cost?
I don't know that. You talking about a new?
I don't know, how many days is somebody here from Titanium?
Oh, we come up when we want to shoot whatever content we want to get. I mean, we're not sitting here.
Right, right.
I could spend 1 hour and get 30 pictures, and the community would think we're standing there next to you.
I guess my question, how do we bang or, get more bang for the buck? I mean, going forward, we want to get up to, the ways to get up to that. How do we do that?
So the agreement, the way that Titanium is situated within our agreement and contract and how they do businesses is a series of blocks of time that we utilize, and we can exchange those blocks. Some of them will be for, okay, this month we want 4 blog posts. We want 3 social media posts per week. We want, and each of those is a series of, a percentage of the monthly bill. Mm-hmm. And then we can move stuff. They've also got capacity and capability to say, okay, what we want is an infographic built, or we want a drone footage. And so he brings his staff up and his team up, and we spend a day or two at different locations, and Susan coordinates with different staff. Where are we at? Where are we working? What's the break this week? What's the emergency now?
So we can always do more. That's what you're asking.
Well, I think we don't want to lose momentum.
Totally.
And my thought was that we needed more input, more product, interesting product that may happen just like the Ridge Road sinkhole or something else that we come to, or I don't know how many guys during the Snowmageddon #2 helped that elderly lady out. There should have been photos of that.
Mm-hmm.
So staff does take photos. I think what you're getting to, would it be more advantageous to have somebody on staff to do that? I don't think so, because they still have, our geographical area is extremely large.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges you often see with public agencies that don't have large budgets is that it's hard to find a one-person show that does graphics and all of the things. So that's why we rely on a consultant, because they have just a deeper bench than we would have with one person.
But coming up with this story in the plan, we can go and plan for that, and you'll reach a point too that the area, I don't want to say a capacity with messaging, but to go up more might be a PPC strategy for, every year post, you back them with $100, so more people see them, right? Algorithmically, you get capped. So that's probably next step. If, I think we could talk about that.
Just like a way of advertising, kind of?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way the platforms work. You're going to go organic, which we've done great. That is a solid foundation.
You get a better algorithm.
You're going to pay to get your eyeballs, and then if you want those people to see it, you pay to see it, right?
And
so,
Rich, I think you're questioning whether or not we have enough data to bring people to see, like the real-time photo or video of something happening.
That's one question.
Do we have that capacity and capability? And I think the answer is yes. We've got, at any point, we've got operations, maintenance, hydro, calling up and saying, hey, there's this going on. Susan gets in her car, if it's, during the times that we can. And we've also, like I said, reached out to all the staff, all the supervisors. They're so good. There's almost a little competition amongst the
Yeah, they got some good pictures.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's almost a little competition. Hey, hydro, how many photos can you get this month? Or-
Yeah, and
or
sent that
off,
way.
What's your, you know, what do you got for us? And then we translate those directly into these posts and into the newspaper as well.
And from my professional opinion, there's a balance of, we call it real and polish. There's the time, and I think the obviously going in and interviewing you all, and what do you do? Let's get that out there, and that's that high quality editing, the music, where that would come in as far as the, you know, increased investment. But there's also the real raw stuff. This is happening now, and it's not polished. That's what they resonate with, right?
So I spent a lot of time trying to amplify the social media. I think what would be helpful, and by the way, you've done a great job, way better than 2 years ago.
Thank you.
Is the mutual benefit stuff. So like we have Placer County Farm Tour coming up, and you know, there's one up here in Nevada County, and you know, that's $100 million business for Placer County, and most people don't know that. So you throw $100 million on a banner and a picture of you know, NID water going into this orchard. I think that's where people would be really interested in seeing what the mutual benefits of the community is. What's going on, you know, as far as fixing roads and hydro, the ski pictures are great, you know, the water pictures, everyone's super jazzed about the storage right now. So those have played well. But I think as we get into the spring and summer months, even if you just have whoever's going, I'm gonna do the Placer County Farm Tour, so I think.
Well, I think that, and we've talked about it, I plan on coming up with the microphone and a camera and just actually interviewing a lot of the residents.
Yeah.
Do you know? Where do you think it's going? Right, see what they have to say and post that, cut that up into a cool video.
Yeah. Nevada County Sheriff's Department, their dispatcher appreciation week.
Yep.
So they went around to all the deputies, and it was really impactful.
Well, and strategically, when you invite your customers into the story, and it's not just you as the NID pumping information, and invite them, and they go, oh, that's me, I was on there, and there's more of that, they are now a part of it, and they're way more incentivized, you know, via ego, to share it.
So how much money if you're gonna go with algorithms boosting, participant count, viewers, how much money would you need for the rest of the year?
We do about, right now, we're roughly $500 a month on boosts.
No, like $250.
Yeah, $250.
Yeah, to $250. So I mean, if
pretty
you want
minimal level right now.
How much, you boosting quite a bit more?
Yeah, a couple thousand would be.
You could, yeah. That's not part of that. That's part of that 65.
No.
That's a different line item.
Yeah.
In our communications budget, but we boost every post, or at least the ones that we know where we think are gonna get a lot more traction.
If it's strategic,
The spillway at Combi, you know, all the water falling over. People like that.
Fish and Hemphill.
Fish and Hemphill, right.
One of the, you know, second level organic things to do is get the local politicians' social media reflecting it. Because, you know, they've got thousands of eyes, if not hundreds of thousands. And so that's free.
Yeah.
It's a good opportunity to talk to them on the Placer Farm Bureau too.
I will be doing that.
Yeah, all this is great content ideas and ones that we've talked about and are actually in getting planned out to get scoped and put together.
Great job for everyone. It's really accelerated over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
It is interesting that for the first 100 years, right, NID, well, you really, as a utility, and Jennifer continues to say this, right, we just want to be basically silent. I mean, we want the water to flow.
I don't want anyone to know us.
Right? I mean, so there's this dichotomy between we want people to be engaged with us, yet at the same time, we're a water district, and water should just flow.
We're never gonna be as popular as police or fire.
Right.
Ever.
We've got a pile of employees behind us doing the work at night, behind the scenes. People really don't see it.
But that's the challenge that I love, is how do we make that happen? And that's why these numbers are incredible, because it's done organic by utility. Yeah.
Craig, could you talk a little bit about the general manager's center and how that leadership is increased and what is the impact there? 'Cause I just think that piece is phenomenal.
Susan, do you know those numbers of how that's increasing quite a bit? You had actually just sent those data the other day. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it is, you know.
Director. The GM newsletter goes out monthly, and I send it out to our general news list. That's 4,700 emails that go out. And right now, we have a click rate, people that actually read it, at about 8%. And that sounds low, but by average, that's very good. Also on the website, people can come directly to the website and access the newsletter. And I don't have the exact numbers, but yes, we're getting a lot of traction with that. And in this newsletter, if we send out a news release or little snippets of things that happen, that is included in the newsletter. It's about 16 pages every month, and that includes statistics and charts from hydro and engineering and operations. And from what we can see, people are reading not only the feature stories, but really digging down into the charts. So I'm very pleased with the impact that's having.
Yes, I don't know if you're doing most of the authorship for that or the coordination, but you're doing an awesome job, Susan.
She does all of
She does the whole thing.
it. It should be letters from Susan.
Susan Lowry.
It's a wonderful,
We-
representation of what's happening in the district, I really do.
That communication directly to customers' email addresses really was something that customer service and NID has been trying to gather over the last number of years, 4 or 5 years. We really haven't had a huge number of emails. And whenever our customer service talks to somebody, you know, we try to get that email. So that email then goes into the bank of 4,500, is that right? 4,700, and so that's growing out of, you know, whether that's not always representative of the 28,000 customers that we have, but we're watching that number grow, and hopefully we continue to get those direct emails, because that's a good information directly.
And one thing to know, on the website, we have maybe a dozen different lists, and all these people sign up, they volunteer. So these 4,700 subscribers, they tick the box, volunteer. For example, Plan for Water, we have 750 people that said yes, interested in getting that information.
So I know that another group, similar thing, monthly newsletter. Is it kosher to go talk to them and say if they would actually send out our newsletter? How
No,
does that work?
we don't want to send out theirs.
We're not gonna send out theirs.
Well, if we ask them to send out ours, then they will ask us to send out theirs.
But if they didn't?
No, we don't, public agencies typically won't do that unless it's something that's, we don't want responsibility for that.
I never got more negative feedback than I did during the campaign when I said blast email. People don't care if you blast their text, they really don't like blast emails.
Yeah. But to Susan's point, these are people have
Well, you're
clicked
different.
on, right?
Yeah,
But
I'm
yeah.
talking about grabbing someone else's email.
Yeah.
No.
You're gonna get a whole bunch of people
Not
going,
interested.
I did not ask for this. Whereas,
Right,
you've
they,
got a list that they subscribe to.
Correct.
right.
But we can always encourage people to come to our website and read it there, or.
It's on LinkedIn, that's where I read it.
Yes.
Yep.
I get it from Jennifer every month.
Hey, I reshare it, I'm helping our numbers.
Well, good work, and the website is also.
Just the only one I participate in, on Pinterest.
Yeah.
Strategy.
Yep. Yep. Well, good.
So again, the budget, you're happy for this year?
Yeah.
Huh?
I mean, you know, could always replace the BEP 23 million with communications
Put it all in
budget.
Silly.
Really do well.
We could have the biggest algorithm ever.
No, I think in general, we're, for the buck that we've got and the value that we're getting, I think it's really good today. Whether that is the case in 2 years or next year, I'm not sure, but right now I feel pretty good about it.
Thank you so much. I don't know if we have any members of the public who would like to have any comments?
Throw them all away.
Dang.
Okay, seeing
Hoping.
that, no more questions, Tyler.
Okay, shoot. Great. Well, thank you, board.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Post it? Yeah. I will. I got the picture. Yeah.
All right, general managers report.
I have nothing to report.
Okay.
The water supply is great.
Shut that down.
And report it out.
Okay. Do you want to
Black.
cover?
I can.
It sounds
I'll
video
let you cover PCAR, but I attend a PCAR with Karen, and then, I think I mentioned last night, so I'll shamelessly plug again. Tonight, if you're hungry, pulled pork sandwiches, I said tri-tip, it's pulled pork at Lincoln High School's farm. If you have not seen the 400-acre farm that Lincoln High School actually owns, it's quite impressive with the full, welding and metal shop out there. It's really beautiful. So we'll be out there tonight. You can join a raffle for half a pick. So come on out. And all the farm, tours are happening soon. I know, Tahoe Cattlemen's Association have one, Placer County. Go see a farm.
Okay, so he said farm tour, May 17th, this is the Valley County Farm Tour. And they're gonna highlight water on the whole tour. That's the purpose of each stop. Irrigation practices, vineyard and stuff. So they want us to go along and be talking on the bus about water. So we haven't got the invitation yet, but I didn't notice it. That's coming up. Karen and I did the, what do we call when we do our dog and pony show, right? To find Placer Nevada County Farm Bureau. It's really a successful event, I thought, from the coordination and the venue and people, 45 people showed up. I really want to put out a kudo to Karen and Ricky for creating content and putting this together. They did a fantastic job of taking an idea that I didn't know how to do. So it was well received. Fun to run the gamut, the comments we got.
Building I hadn't been in over 30 years. It's great.
Won't share those, but, I think it went a long ways to gain our trust with, especially the ag producers who are relying on this cheap water they bring. And then last Wednesday night, we attended the Farm Bureau meeting, the Nevada County Farm Bureau meeting.
Yeah. It's a good farm group meeting. Yeah. And, thanks again to Bailey, all right, Desiree, Sandra, everybody came out. So this is, a new look at where water goes in California. And the new calculations have about 15% of all water captured going to agriculture. The rest is to everything else. And about 5% to urban and 80% to the environmental causes. So I just keep hammering, can't believe that ag gets 80% of all the water and it's made, rained in precipitation in California. So otherwise, been spending probably too much time in front of Bloomberg Business News and Fox Business News. Economically, it does not look good. The Fed has basically ran out of ammo and have very little wiggle room to do anything. So.
Just saying.
Just saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Can our member of public, Ricky, like to give an update, or is that like, forget it? Okay, so I got the forget it look. I got the forget it look.
Forget it, look,
So,
two people.
We'll let Ruben do it.
Ricky says that sounds good. Okie dokie, so as folks mentioned, I was on the speaking circuit this last couple weeks, so I did the Placer County Association of Realtors with Trevor, and thanks so much to Ricky and Chip for putting together the presentation that focused really on, realtor-related interests and NID, so that was super helpful.
The
And
most engaging meeting I've done since I've been doing this.
yeah, I mean, they
Very
were
interesting.
The realtors?
really
Yeah,
involved
they're usually
with
good, too.
fire energy-wise too.
Yeah.
And then, as Chris mentioned, we did the Placer and Nevada County Farm Bureau meeting. Just great questions, but I think the interesting observation is when you were going through one of your last slides about the key messages that you're trying to get out with the, through our messaging, those are completely aligned in the presentation. So that was a really nice thing to reinforce. And I think just people really not understanding what the district is facing. I mean, I think we can't do enough to get out and be talking to people, particularly interest groups that are totally reliant on water, such as our agricultural. And then Rich and I met with the Nevada County Contractors Association Board, and that was also a very good conversation, a small group, but really interesting and valuable. I also attended the Nevada County Farm Bureau meeting, not violating any rules. And then I had a very interesting conversation with Jennifer, Greg, and Doug, and two of our environmental community members, and that was a very interesting and productive meeting as well. That's it.
I have one thing I forgot, realtors. The California Realtors Association has voted last week to endorse a bill that's trying to make its way through the legislature that would not require CEQA for the construction of storage reservoirs. I'm just saying, I mean, I hadn't even heard of the bill, but I was told by the president that they did that.
Okay. Well, Wednesday, we have lots of sunshine, and it's a good time to end a meeting.
Search and rescue tonight, Penn Valley, North.